Hello, you are very welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. I'm Shane, that's Daragh.
Hello.
Two brothers discussing all things rugby through the lens of Leinster and Ireland.
That is we.
That is us, yeah. This is episode 106. It is another busy one because we've had the Rugby Championship still ongoing. We're going to, I suppose, go through all the international rugby first before going through the end. But yeah, it's a busy enough one again.
It is indeed. We're going to open, as we do, looking at the Rugby Championship, and we're going to open with the main story of the week, that incredible game between Australia and South Africa. Quade Cooper, who we didn't even envisage being on the field last week, comes up with an insane performance from the kicking tee, and the Wallabies pull off a deserved win at home against the Boks. And we're going to get our teeth into that one. We're also going to be previewing this week's game between the Springboks and Australia, the rematch where the world champions are seemingly on the ropes. And we're also then going to discuss the All Blacks game against the Pumas, where they handily dealt with Ledesma's fledgling charges.
Yes.
But the Rugby Championship is going to take up the bulk of the show, as it does the main story going at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we move on from international rugby, we're always also going to look at the US Eagles because they managed to overcome their deficit against the Canadians and will see themselves through to a clutch tie against Uruguay for America's one. The Canadians will have to be watching out for Chile waiting in the wings. We're going to discuss all things that and just kind of see how the Rugby World Cup qualifying permutations are going now as we've just passed the halfway point between World Cups.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're also going to take a look at the women's qualifiers, the women's games that have been going on, where Spain pulled off an upset that was upsetting, frankly.
Yes, it
and
was.
And aptly named upset over Ireland. We're going to dig into that. And we're going to dig into all the club footy that's returning. We've got the Currie Cup final, which happened last week. The Top Couture is ongoing, and now the Premiership adding its name to the list of competitions returning. And also the Rugby Europe Super Cup making its inaugural weekend. We'll touch on that as well. So we'll wrap up all of club rugby. The URC will be starting next week, and then everything will aboard. It is September now. We're away.
That's right, yeah. And we're also going to take a look ahead to the Vancouver Sevens, because more rugby is returning. The Seven Series is returning, and we're going to get into that. There are a few teams not taking part, a few kind of changes in the format, but it'll be great to see the Sevens boys back on the pitch again and giving us good entertainment. We're going to get into that, and then we're going to wrap up the show with the news of the week as well, all the rugby things that are making headlines in the rugby world. In other news, it is 2K subs. Hey, thank you very much for all your support and subscribing and enjoying this form of long form rugby discussion that we've been doing. It's been great over the last few years, and we appreciate all the support that we've been getting from ye. With that in mind though, the job's not done. Next stop 3K. Keep hitting that subscribe button, keep liking the vids, sharing the vids, commenting as well. We do love our many commenters, and we love the kind of discourse we have in the comment thread. But mainly we're just chuffed with 2K, and thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been nice. It's been great cultivating this little rugby community of good chatter and of a diverse array of fan perspectives as well, which we definitely enjoy. So be sure to jump in the comment section where you can and enter that discussion. We haven't been as good as we might be in terms of getting involved ourselves in the chat, but we always try and do better on that. And we do, rest assured, we do read all the comments as well. They're all great to have as well. So 2K of you, welcome along. Delighted to have you along for the journey. But I suppose, without much more ado, we should get into the meat of this week's show.
And we're going to start in the Southern Hemisphere with the Rugby Championship, looking all the way down to Australia. It's been fantastic bits of action from it over the weekend and over the last few weeks as well. And some stories coming from last weekend. I suppose, unlike what we normally do, where we kind of go sequentially with these things, we're going to kind of stagger them and kind of clump them together, because there was one massive spectacle that was majorly newsworthy, and then there was another spectacle that was had some nice tries in it. But we're gonna do the whole kind of journalistic approach, and we're just gonna headline them. So we're gonna start with the main headline, which was the Quade Cooper show. It was Wallabies 28, South Africa's 26. So close. It came down to the absolute wire, as clutch as it gets. Last kick of the game from a ways out, and just who better to come up and slot it. They were having a discussion as to whether it was going to be himself or Hodgie, and they made the right decision.
I like Hodgie, but man, he doesn't have good form in regards to the last minute kicks.
Last kick of the game.
And no, Quade had it on a dime. He'd got one out there from there before, so they were dead right to back him. And man, what a clutch performance! 8 kicks from 8 from the tee. A real lesson. We don't talk about it enough, because probably there just isn't as much intrigue to it. But the importance of a quality goal kicker to a test side side and turning close losses into wins and close wins into losses.
It was typified by Pollard's kind of shaky form off the tee in the very same game, where he had been pretty solid throughout the year, but he left a hell of a lot of them out there, and then Willemse came off the bench and did a skewed one way right as well. That could have been potentially game icing. That would have made it 3 points. It would have possibly at least secured the draw, but you never know. Quade might have missed that kick if it was only for a draw, and he was vexed about going for it. The psychology of going for a draw versus going for a win.
I don't think the Wallabies would have gone for a draw.
They probably wouldn't.
They would have just gone for the win. That's who they are.
Yeah,
but I mean, even beyond the goal kicking elements, this was just a great game of rugby. From a performance wise, from Australia's point of view, I mean, listen, they nearly lost it, and that would have been a shame if it had gone down that way, because they were the better team. They moved the ball really well. They caused that Bok defense all kinds of problems. They found that seam that I've been talking about all year off first phase, just inside of Am and outside of the wide most forward defender, and they just got on top of it. I mean,
Currie and the like down.
Currie and Valentini in particular, off first and second phase off set pieces, were causing chaos, and they just sat down Damien Del Indy time after time after time after time, and Del Indy had he was rocked. He didn't win a contact in the game. He was going backwards. Currie is just a game changing player, absolutely brilliant. Like pre-match, if you were, one of the reasons you would have been so down on Australia is because you would have been like stacking up the squads, and if you were picking like a combined 15 out of the three of them, you would have had like South Africa's 3/4 line nailed on in there. If you were going, I'd take Pollard and Del Indy and Am over Cooper, Currie and Ikitau, player for player. Last weekend you would have taken all three Wallabies. They were far better. Am was really shaky. I mean, he was struggling because Del Indy was struggling on his inside.
But he still had a few bad drops, including a 7-point one.
And the rarest of things from Am, I mean, he sometimes has the bad handling moments, and there were two of them in this game, which was no good. But also he was at fault. He made a terrible read for the try. Faf de Klerk gets the sort of the blame because he's the guy who shoots out a line on Currie, and Currie steps in, but Am actually buys in on the inside and turns his whole body away from Currie, and that space is just gone then because Currie's that good. And that was the one try that the Wallabies managed to take in the game. I mean, it was egg on Am's face.
They're precious things against the Boks, even a struggling, floundering Boks. But it was a crucial one in that, and it was a well timed one as well. The Callaway strike, because I was impressed with how they opened the game, because the Boks were doing they started a little slow, but they were still managing to kind of turn the screw with some of their kick to contest kind of shapes, and they were milking some good 3-point opportunities and converting them early on. Pollard's boots seemed to be on at the beginning, but each time they just couldn't exit before the Wallabies pinned back, normally on the same phase. And it's a similar model. It's a very different Wallabies team, but even in the years prior, when we're looking at the Springboks record and stuff in Australia, they've always managed to have the hoodoo on them on some set pieces, but very often from restarts. The Wallabies dial in things like restarts, and the Springboks can sometimes dial out things like restarts. And certainly when they just scored, they went 3-0 up and then they coughed it straight back up. It's 3-3. They went 6-3 up, coughed it straight back up.
I think that was the egregious one, wasn't it? The second one where the Boks tried to play out and ended up dropping the ball and giving away a penalty. They were definitely a little off the Boks energy wise on defense. They weren't quite themselves, but a huge part of that was because of what the Wallabies were doing. They managed to set their own tempo. They were getting over the gain line because of just the matchups 1-on-1 were better than they could have anticipated. Valentini, I thought, played above himself. Hooper, as always, was class. And Currie was the man of the match for me. And even Ikitau was hustling really hard.
The Boks kept trying to run over him when they found themselves in the open and saw Ikitau. They kept trying to truck over him, and he made every single one of those tackles and just stopped his man. Even if it meant grabbing onto an ankle, he put him down. It was brilliant showing from the 3/4 line from Oz. And bizarre to see this Boks side look so unassured in both with and without the ball. But when that try went over for Oz, you could see that was, like we were discussing, that is their picture. If they could scrub out the early pressure and make the 3-pointers that the Boks are taking not count on the scoreboard, and then strike with a try and force them to chase. And you could see that coupled with the fact that they were aware of their poor record and poor form in Australia and trying to get over it and then going a try down, it really did start to tell on the whole team. And seeing guys like Khaleesi, who is such a leader for him, doing a needless tip tackle really and getting sin binned and setting the whole side back a bit. There was kind of inverse leadership going on from the core leadership
it was
group.
it was something that he referenced, Khaleesi, after the game immediately as well, was their poor record in Australia. And it was definitely playing on their minds.
Sure.
And it was probably the wrong kind of motivator in that it just made them a little edgy.
And it just meant that when they went behind, it meant that panic could set in very quickly, and it surely did. But
they were comprehensively outplayed for the most part. I would say, like, people highlight discipline issues. The Springboks defense wasn't quite itself. They weren't quite in sync with one another. They weren't getting off the line as well. They weren't able to slow the Wallaby ball down. Their scramble defence was still very good.
Yeah, sure. Even that penalty try case where it was the Villaroo knock. It was slightly unlucky because he did try and bat it up, but when you go with one hand, they have no sympathy for you. But when they were assessing whether it was a penalty try, like even before the footage, you're looking at it going like, well, of course it's not a penalty try. There's surely someone there.
Yeah.
And you look at the footage, like, there's my Pippy. And Etzebeth, and him, and him. Yeah. And it's like, actually, there are 4 of them, so no penalty try. Yeah, like, they still scrambled very, very well, hence keeping a very game and very skillful Wallabies to only 1 try.
Only 1 try, they outscored them 3-1, but the Wallabies managed to notch up 7 3-point penalties from Quade Cooper. And then if you'd been told that story, it would make sense that the Boks were a little off and a little ill-disciplined, which I'm sure they've highlighted in the post-match. But for my money, actually, most of those penalties that were kicked were forced. Yeah. There was like it was off the back of very good offensive play.
Yeah, it's a curious phrasing. Yeah. Like you can either be positive with the penalty or negative with the penalty. It depends what you want to do. Like with a scrum penalty, is that a scrum penalty that you won or a scrum penalty that you lost? Yeah. They normally, like, you are being penalised at the scrum, it's but both. But from a tight head's point of view, if you're Taniela Tupou and you have a second left and all the Springbok fans are shouting because they're 1 point up and ole and you absolutely monster the scrum, you won a penalty there. That's not like, it's not ill discipline or anything. You just won the penalty.
Exactly, and for the most part, that's what the Wallabies were doing. And you were right to bring up Tupou. We were going to mention there. I mean, Cooper gets all the headlines, and rightly so. He had nerves of steel. He came into the team. He looked assured. He looked brilliant. But the game-winning play was really made by Tupou. Yeah. What a scrum. Completely caught the Boks with their pants down there. As you rightly say, the fans singing ole
singing
ole,
premature ole oles, which, like, and speaking as a Leinster fan, it's never a good sign, because normally when we start hubristically ole oleing before the full-time whistle, a concession surely follows. It felt a little kind of forced. I don't think they were fully believing it, but
the fans were believing it all right. They thought they had it at that stage. It was just scrum and
kick it off.
But Tupou had other ideas, and people were giving out about illegal scrummaging. So much is made of deliberate wheeling in the game, where, like, basically what's going on in the scrum is that the two are having a wrestling match, and actually both are lined up a little bit straight, both are lined up a little bit pointed inwards, but you always get a little bit of that in a scrum. And basically what you're looking at is a wrestling match, and I don't think it was egregious from Tupou turning in. I think when Tupou started winning the matchup, instantly, I can't remember, it was Bell Slipper, in fact.
Slipper was on for
It was on for that play. From the Bok point of view, it was Oxenche.
That's right.
Oxenche, who is definitely their shakiest loose head scrummager. Just ended up buckling and turning inward, and you could have given a penalty to the Wallabies at the scrum, but as it was, the ball came out and Nick White got the jackal steal, and he gets the cred for the penalty, but it was all made by Tupou. It was just a wonderful play, backs to the walls. Like, that guy has been itching to make an impact in the Wallaby jersey all championship.
He managed to come into a game that was still in the balance, and then shredding a Springbok scrum is something that you can write home about.
He's some player too, but he's only getting better as well. He's brilliant.
Still
that was a serious play. And it was great to see the Wallabies show a bit of clutch. Great to see them win a game. I think they are still one of the top sides in the world. I think they suffer massively for having to play the All Blacks three times a year.
It's going to skew you in terms of it's so evident that, like, watching even the way the Reds are playing rugby these days and the way the Brumbies are playing rugby versus 5 years ago or 10 years ago was the doldrums. When the Lions came to Australia, I'm pretty sure 2013, that was like the worst Australian team ever. Certainly in my lifetime. That was, like, it was James Horwell captain, and there was a lot of looseness. They had no scrum at all. Like, whatever about demolishing a Springbok scrum, like, they got demolished by Corbisiero in the third test every single time. Like, they just couldn't lock down a scrum to save their lives. Couldn't really do that much with the ball either. That was the darkest time, I thought, and there have been ups and downs since, and there's a constant
World Cup final.
The 2015 they managed to rally and make a World Cup final, even though we were still making the talk about the death of rugby in Australia and all of this. Like, all of that was a backdrop to them eventually putting a good run together under Michael Cheika and getting all the way to the final, because one of the things they do still have is just a real good footballing brain as a collective. They are really good footballers. They play all kinds of sports. They understand where a try is. They understand how to attack space and utilize it. So they're never too far away. But systematically over the last few years, they've put in really good things from grassroots up. Like the Reds are unrecognisable from where they were at the tail end of Super Rugby when it was originally in that big format. Like when Quade Cooper last was with the Reds, they were kind of a shell of an entity at all. And through Brad Thorne, they've got a bit of grit to them. So like it's been coming for a while, and it's just been so unfortunate to watch with the constant Trans-Tasman kind of batterings going on, and the Super Rugby Trans-Tasman didn't help, and then you have this Bledisloe series, and then just the attendance. It was a double header in Seba Stadium, and it wasn't well attended, even though it was two Rugby Championship games.
That was weird.
And I think it's just weariness from getting beaten a lot in these Trans-Tasman games. Just there's so many more options in Australia. You can watch the Aussie rules. If you're fed up with rugby, you can go the NRL, you can do cricket. Like they are mad about sport, and there's always something else to hold your intrigue. So unless the Wallabies are winning and putting performances together, they don't tend to get the crowds, which is a bit of a shame, because considering it's a fickle thing, the rugby fan base. But like a month ago or 2 months ago, they were beating France in a decisive test that was also awesome, and took some touch
and well attended. And they're definitely still one of the top sides in the world, and I was delighted for them to get this win. They did thoroughly deserve it. They were the smarter, better footballing team than the Boks. From a Bok point of view, they'll take a lot of encouragement from that maul that got in 3 times. I thought when Malcolm Marks came on, the whole pack was more assured. Vincent Koch as well. Like they were still very a tidy bench impact from them. And they managed to get on top and damn near win the game. I mean, from the moment I think the second card came in, that Villaroo card, the Boks did play a pretty good game up until that last pants down moment at the scrum.
They managed to nick it. They showed their quality in getting back into a game that they were thoroughly outplayed in, and hat trick for their maul. As far as that, that's still a good Bok recipe, and still a point of concern for a Wallaby. It is the concern I was having about their locks. They couldn't deal when they were 5 metres out. They just couldn't stop it, which is a problem going into this week. But it didn't matter, because they managed to just hold them off and still have the clutch to execute a kick at the very death.
Well, they did what we asked. They had a big first half. They took the 8 point lead into half time, and they needed every one of those points. And that was very credible performance from the Wallabies. That was just part one of this story. There is a second part this week. We have the reverse fixture, even though both in Queensland as it happens.
This is a bit more at home.
It is a bit more at home. The Wallabies take on the Springboks at Suncorp Stadium. This is tomorrow, Saturday the 18th of September. It's kicking off at 5 p.m. Local time, 8 a.m. our time tomorrow morning. Very, very exciting game, obviously. This time it's in Suncorp. Matthew Carley is taking the game. We didn't mention Luke Pearce there in the last game, but he did a very good job. He did, Very good communicator, Luke Pearce. Hopefully Carley can replicate that to some extent. But this is a great opportunity for the Wallabies to really back up this win over the world champs, and I think convince their fan base as well that just because you lose to the All Blacks doesn't mean you're not going somewhere.
Yeah, indeed.
And they definitely are going places under Rennie, and if they could get this win here, I think it'd be just an incredible positive.
I would think so too. Yeah, there's definitely there's every reason to be confident, not least because they won last week, but also just the home field factor. Like it of course they had the home field factor last week. We were highlighting it. Like the Boks had to adjust to both playing in Australia, which they're not particularly good at historically speaking or recently speaking, but also their first venture out in front of fans, in front of any kind of crowd, and it was likely to be a hostile one. All of that played a factor, and there was obviously an adjustment period, but this is a different factor now, because it's not just Brisbane, it's not Seba Stadium, it's Suncorp, which the Wallabies just love playing there. It is very much their home.
Yeah, I mean, we have a stat here from rugby.com.au, or not, just even a breakdown, but they're undefeated at Suncorp since 2016. They have seen off in that time. They've seen off South Africa. They've seen off Italy, New Zealand, South Africa again. Like these names. Ireland, that was 2018 Ireland, who were very good team.
Unbeaten apart from Suncorp, couldn't manage to do that.
Couldn't get over that. Argentina in 2019, who were a tough team to play. 2020, they beat New Zealand again. They are 2 wins in a row against New Zealand in Suncorp.
Yeah.
Then obviously they had the 2 wins against France in the series just gone. Losing the game not in Suncorp. It is very much a spiritual home for them, and it's rivaling as being as impactful as any home field in the world, including even the likes of Eden Park, in terms of the degree to which it lifts their performance.
Sure.
It always seems to. They just love playing there, and they get good crowds there, which is helpful, but even when they don't fill it, they're just something about that ground.
Yeah, their passes seem to just stick for them a bit easier when they're in Perth or somewhere else. It seems a bit easier to kind of pull off the miracle
Sydney
play.
In particular, they just can't hack for whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't know what that
Sydney's
is.
like an away game for the Wallabies.
It feels that way. Maybe the Boks should have played there. But even against South Africa as well, their last 10 years, their record here in Suncorp is 4 wins and 1 loss in the 10 years prior. So it's been a while back for South Africa to win.
Yeah, and the one loss was that 2013 team that you highlight, where the Boks absolutely slapped them and they just weren't able to play, even in Suncorp. But that team was especially bad in 2013. This team is not that, and there's a decent amount on the line for the Wallabies in this one. They are the holders of the Rayburn Shield, which is the hypothetical world title in rugby by boxing ways.
The lineal championship in boxing, isn't
that's
that
right?
Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah, they're the first country to beat the mighty Boks since the Lions.
Even if you counted the Lions, the Boks wouldn't back off them.
That's true too.
So so the Boks have been holders of both the World Cup and the Rayburn Shield for the last 2 years. The Wallabies have snatched it off them, and if they can get a win here, they're in a position to hold it for
the
a time.
Argentinians might be eyeballing their chance for it.
I don't know.
It definitely is a fun little dynamic for them. But it's gonna be an interesting one in Suncorp. I don't know how the Boks are going to fare. How do you reckon? What do you think?
Well, from their point of view, it's it's make or break. They have to keep the competition alive. If they lose this game, the All Blacks are going to have a chance to ice the competition before even playing the Boks, which would be so anticlimactic.
It would indeed. Yes.
The monkey of a win in Australia is the one I think the one thing that has eluded Rassie Erasmus.
Yeah, and the likes of Sia Khaleesi as well, who obviously mentioned it in his post-match last week.
He hasn't won in Twickenham. Their own won in Twickenham. Obviously, he hasn't played the likes of Ireland. I think they feel they've put the England demons to bed by winning that final.
Well, winning a World Cup final would kind of expel any of those demons.
Yeah, and not that they had too many either, but that they feel like they've conquered most of the hills they have to conquer. But away in Australia, they've won in New Zealand, but not in Australia. Yeah. So it's definitely something on their minds and their backs to the walls. They have to win if they want to keep this going. They hold the claim to be the best team in the world for now, but the All Blacks have been more convincing than them this year, and are absolutely coming, and they don't want to relinquish it. Certainly not before playing the All Blacks. That'd be a damn shame.
That would be a shame as far as defences go, and it'll involve something mighty special to do it. Just in terms of the squads, we do have both teams named as we shoot this.
No surprises this time.
No surprises this time. No Quade Cooper's up the sleeves this time, but no, he's out on the pitch instead. I suppose will we just rattle through them then, starting with the home team, which is Oz, I believe.
Yes.
For this one, because it is in Australia, don't you know?
That's it.
Number 1 we have James Slipper starting this time. Falau Faianga comes in at 2. Taniela Tupou making up the front row. So new starters, new roles for the boys.
Yeah, Tupou in for a start is great to see.
Getting a chance to go from minute 1, which we've been calling for.
Keeping Bell on the bench for some impact.
True too. Rodda and Phillip keep going at lock after being very impressive in standing up to one of the biggest engine rooms in world rugby, if not the biggest. Then Swinton, Hooper and Valentini remain, so the back 5 remaining pretty solid, pretty much the spine of the team. Nick White comes in to start this time. Tate McDermott rotated out. Quade Cooper retains his jersey at 10, rightly so. Then in the centre, similarly, Karevi and Ikitau immovable now. There's been a lot of chop and changing going on in that Aussie midfield, but those two guys.
I love the solidity. Back 5 of the scrum, midfield trio. Like, there's been so much chopping and changing from Rennie, and it's very different to what they looked like at the start of the season.
Very much so.
But actually, to be able to go with the same team, I suspect Rennie might stick with these guys.
Yeah,
I mean, O'Connor's going to come back in.
O'Connor, sure. Lolosio, they're still going to try and foster up, but it's not like having an option like a 33-year-old Quade who's going to slot 23 points for you. That's a useful asset. Just as far as the back 3, it remains set as well. Corabetti, Kellaway and Banks, so pretty solid, very consistent. Then the bench as well. Do you have the bench there?
I do, yeah. They have Kaitu'u covering hooker, Bell back on the bench covering loosehead, Alatoa has gone. He's expecting the birth of a child. It's raining babies down there in the southern hemisphere.
There's something in the water down there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Tom Robertson from the Force comes in to cover tight head, and it'll be very interesting to see how he goes against the Buck bomb squad's scrum. Yeah, Darcy Swain reserved for the bench along with Pete Samu to offer a bit of heft and a bit of impact from both of those guys.
Yeah.
Off the bench, Tate McDermott obviously changed role to add some impetus off the bench, and then they're sticking with Hodge and Pataya as backs cover. So out and out 10, but Hodge can slot in.
Yeah,
if Quade goes down.
And a fair bit of versatility in terms of that bench as well. A bit more of a traditional kind of, some forwards options and a 3-5-3 split for Australia. The Boks themselves have named theirs as well. We have Nyakanye, Mbanambi and Malherbe. That particular front row unit that they go with.
It's great to see Big Trev back in there. I think they've moved Kitsoff, as we'll say, to the bench along with Marks and Koch, which is their traditional bomb squad trio, and now Trevor and Nyakanye coming in to scrum at loose head. Him versus Tupou's box office. But he probably goes under the radar at how good he is at scrummaging at loose head because he plays so often at tight head. But when he's at loose head, he's quite incredibly destructive and aggressive, and both of these guys are so aggressive at the scrum. So that is going to be one of the key matchups of the game.
Pulsating scrums going on.
I think it's a great selection from Nienaber, I must say. I think getting Big Trev in there, don't understand why he hasn't been there more often, especially at loose head. So I'm excited to see how he goes.
He was very impressive at the tail end of the Lions tour for sure. And then a slight change in the second row. We have Etzebeth retains his jersey, but Marvin Ori comes in at number 5. He's played really well all season. You've been calling for him to get more of a look in. He's kind of one of the new guys on the scene in terms of the squad. He's
perhaps not as hefty as the likes of Daragh, who's out through concussion. Ball player. I like him. I trust him. I think he could go well.
Yeah, for sure. And that he's in there to allow Moster to retain his role at 7, with Khaleesi and Vermeulen making up that back row.
All three of them need to do better this week.
They do. Yeah, they were outworked and outfought last week, and they'll have egg on their face for sure. The back line pretty consistent as well. We have Faf de Klerk and Pollard coming back in at halfback. Delindy and Am in the centre, and we have Mapimpi on one wing and Kosi on the other, and Villy LaRue and making up that back three. Very much a consistent team. There's very little change happens that isn't forced. But it's still very powerful from them. As far as the bench is concerned, have you got the bench there?
Yeah, the bomb squad, Marks, Kitsoff and Koch, as I'm saying, covering the loose heads. Still no out and out locks on the bench, but they have gone with the 3 back rowers as they did last week. Van Staden, Smith and Visa, who I did think had a good impact last week, and just added some energy to the forward pack that was missing.
They finished stronger than they started for sure.
And then they've Herschel Yankees and Willemse, so they've resisted the urge to go with a goal kicker, to bring on a Mornay Stain guy in there. Like Willemse, it was tough to ask him to take on those kicks when he hasn't really kicked at any kind of level in recent times, and he obviously blades that clutch goal kick. They're putting their trust in Pollard. The last time they lost, Pollard came up with some great goal kicks in the second test of the Lions series. They're hoping that he'll
get
just
some
respond.
bounce back ability. They're looking for a lot of bounce back from all of that squad, really, to be honest.
But Willemse is a hard man to drop as well, because he covers so many positions. If you're
doing 6-2, it's very important that you have versatility.
He's great form off the bench. He came in and made just like an incredible play, which when it looked like the game was on the line, when Hooper broke through towards the death and had Hodge on his outside, and Willemse just buys, forces him to make the pass, and then instantly goes across and kills the play on Hodge. That was just a fantastic defensive play, and he's been full of great hustle, Willemse, so delighted to see him still in there as well. Listen, just before as we look through the squads, we're going to take a look at the game now from the point of view of each team, starting with the hosts, Australia, who are down as the home side this week. And obviously it is it's like when you're coming off a win, it's obviously harder to look for points to work on, but they have to expect the Bok defence to be a little more hungry this time, and so they'll just have to play that bit sharper. I still think the key thing is for Karevi to win his matchup. When Karevi sits down Dale Indy, that just disorientates the Bok defence. They're just not the same force.
It shows their absence of Peter Steph-Toit, who does a lot of work on that inside, was noticeable, and like Mostert is doing a creditable impression but he is still a lock, and
he
he's
really
more
is a
rangy.
lock, more so than Peter Steff is. He actually just is a lock playing in the back row.
That's true.
And
Peter Steff just brought a lot of speed off the line and kind of led that line from the inside, which it was the connect. You had Am on the outside, him on the inside, and then a Delinde shaped wall in the middle with Pollard there, who's not going to shirk a contact either. They are a little bit discombobulated with that, so you're right, just keep running that hard line from an Oz point of view. Karevi, Valentini, send those guys down that channel.
Valentini has been phenomenally physical, and getting him on the ball off set pieces into that channel is important, but Karevi is still so much the key man, because he's just making things happen. He's got wonderful footwork, but he's also got wonderful hands and deceptive strength, and he was comfortable, a rare thing, a guy who was comfortable in the physical contact with the Boks and winning them. And if he can keep that up, all the Wallabies need to do is just stay sharp and pick lines off him. One of the best things about last week was just that they were clinical. It was one break from Karevi, and obviously the pass was like maybe a little marginal, but I think it was good.
I think so.
And just to be able to take that try off that line break is something that they obviously have to foster and keep going with. The Boks have a great scramble D, but if they can pinpoint those one or two moments when Karevi gets like through and into a bit of space and pick like the likes of Ikitau, pick good lines off him and finish line breaks and turn them into tries, especially early doors, that is definitely the path for them. And just in general, if they can keep the pace of the game high, they will cause the Springboks problems, they will pick up penalties, and they will be able to add points on the board. And
absolutely,
that's the key for their attack. This game, as it was last week, will be decided when the Wallabies have the ball for me, and last week they won that matchup, and this week the Boks will be better. They will be more ready, they will be tougher off the line, and so it's up to the Wallabies to be just that bit more assured and more smart in terms of where they're picking their lines and finding scenes.
Be deceptive and be quick. A lot falls on Nick White, who comes in for this one as well. Tate McDermott set a lovely tempo last week, and that was key to getting their big ball runners on the front foot, and then it gave a chance for Quade Cooper to kind of move the ball nicely. Actually, his goal kicking was great, but I loved his hands. He had a few little kind of just quick hands through the thing to avoid the contact himself. He took very few contacts, which is a good sign in your 10. He was taking it to the line without getting smashed against that Bok D, which again you can't really expect this week. You're going to expect more hungry flight off the line, but it means that your 9 is the one setting that tempo, getting the passes clean off the base, because as we were saying last week, like Nick White has a good running game, Tate McDermott has a great running game. They were both showing it off in the Bledisloe series, albeit in losing efforts. There's less of that available against the Boks. Even a dysfunctional Bok defense is still pretty resourced around that ruck, so it becomes pivotal that your passing is crisp and accurate and a little wide of the ruck as well, to just try and sit down a lot of those Bok defenses with quick ruck clearance. So like keeping that tempo very, very high is how you run them ragged. And in Australia, the conditions play to that. Like it's easier to field the high balls. Things like actually Banks will as well. Things like diffusing the Bok game plan, which we all know by rote at this point, having watched the Lions tour. They were ready for it. There were kicks came their way, but Banks was on top of it all day long, and he'll have to be again. But like, play the conditions. You're going to be in sunny Australia. Try and keep that tempo flowing. Be confident that you are the quicker team, because we saw the evidence last week. You would have thought so on paper, and there was evidence for it last week.
I think actually that set that I referenced with the Willems tackle that broke it up just after the Boks took the lead in the last 10 minutes is a great example of why the Wallabies should just persist when they're attacking. I mean, they had the ball in and around the 22 area, and they were getting smashed back, and the Boks were bringing loads of energy, kind of like the tail end of that Lions game that the Lions lost, and they were brought all the way back to their own halfway
from their
line.
22 to around the halfway line before they finally on phase whatever.
It was Karevi just put a bit of footwork on, got through the contact and found an offload, and all of a sudden Hooper was in space, and that was the danger. But exactly, they were able to suck up the pressure, and if they can just mind the pill and keep control of the ball, they didn't give the Boks any sniff of a defensive try in this game, and that was so important.
And they also didn't get suckered into the box kicking game, which is so easily done.
Once or twice they did.
Well, no, they kicked on their own terms. You can still box kick, but they weren't settling into a few phases of going backwards and then slowing it up and box kicking, which the Springboks are more than capable of dealing with. They designed their game to try and force you to do that, but if you can be stubborn in your willingness to keep the ball alive and move it around and keep it high tempo, even with a few frenetic passes or loose passes here and there, it still adds up to like playing your game proactively rather than reacting to the Boks. And yeah, the Boks were shocked by it and struggled to deal with it. A combination of factors: the crowd, the conditions, maybe a bit of travel fatigue or a bit of gap between matches, but all of that added up to the ascendancy being with the Wallabies last week, and they're going to want to keep that foot on the accelerator this week and just press home that advantage that they feel they have.
100%, yeah, and the presence of Nick White in the team, I think, is emphasising the tactical kicking game.
Yeah,
just he does need to maintain that speed. He was good off the bench last week, but when they do get the Boks kind of flat-footed on their heels a little bit, then all of a sudden Nick White has a great vision, a great eye for where they're light, because they push up so much. They really do try and just get in your face and win with pressure, that they leave spaces in behind, and when you can get them a bit flat-footed and give yourself a sec to find that space, there's no better man for seeing and delivering it than Nick White, as was demonstrated by his lovely 50-22.
That's it. He had one of them last week, more of them this week. They're such a good in, and it's something, again, a tacit psychological thing. Like the Bok pack are a bit like the bullish English pack. They love looking up from a set piece and seeing that their 10s kick them all the way up the pitch, and conversely, when they see that the opposition 9 or 10 has kicked them all the way back into their own 22 and then it's their ball, it's just going to make the heads drop or get very frustrated. These are big moments that can turn a game, and actually even from 9 Nick White will have to lead, but Quade Cooper dialing that in as well. I thought his boot, not just from the tee but from open play, was very, very good, particularly in the first half last week. He was because the Boks were bringing that intensity off the line. He was not shy of just little dink over the top just to check it. Like it didn't
quite work.
They didn't quite work, but they worked in that they slowed the defence down, because they were the early exchanges, and it just meant that they were less confident of coming up in that line. Even if you didn't convert the first time, just means you have to check that blitz, because he's demonstrated a willingness to chip it over you if you're gonna leave that space.
I do think that the Boks could turn that into a weakness though, if they get in his head and force him to give those away. I didn't necessarily love that play, even though I do like the infield kicks.
I just think it's a good response to this Bokti. Early pressure, turn them on their heels as often as you can is not a bad shout, and avoid it meant, again, contact avoidance for your 33-year-old talisman 10, so he's still there altogether in the end when he needs to kick a clutch goal. True
enough. But yes, the other big battle that we're sleeping on is just what's going to happen up front. The back line can set all the tempo they want. Currie can win his matchups. They're going to have to be mindful of the ball in and around the ruck area. They're going to have to be ferocious, because they've got to expect that the Boks, with their freaky physicality, are going to be coming at you all guns blazing this week. And that's like at set piece. Obviously the maul was an area that they're struggling with.
It was open play was actually where they won the game, because the work rate of their whole back row, Swinton, Hooper and Valentini, they just completely outworked their Bok counterparts, and were all over the place at the breakdown, at the carry, both sides of the ball, tackling like demons as well. That'll have to be replicated. But as you say, there are other matchups. Like they'll fancy it. They've started Tupou this week. That'll be an exciting one. Each scrum will be definitely dynamic and pulsating, and I'd say some penalties will go either way before a dominant force emerges later into the game. But the one that's a main concern for the Wallabies, and I was concerned going into last week, and it was the main takeaway in terms of how we nearly lost this game. We shouldn't have been anywhere near losing. Was just their locks trying to stop their maul. The line out sets from the Boks were, like, even in a floundering performance, they were so accurate, and the Wallaby locks were seemingly powerless to stop them whenever they got 5
they
or 10
did manage
out.
to poach a couple when
Mbambi
was throwing it. That was their really only
avenue was stealing it in the air, but as soon as it got down, and their transition was very, very clean, particularly off Mostert. Actually, Mostert is great in the air, and he has a really good transfer of the ball for them, and as soon as they go to him at the back, the maul is almost, it's doomed. It's doomed for the Wallabies' point of view, and you have guys like Phillip trying to haul it down but just falling over with one Bok in his hand, and it still goes out, and you're like, no, what do we do? There were a few times he was trying to swim through it, but he was getting handled and not being able to do it, and that is a major concern. I'm sure they're working on it this week. I'm sure the whole it's not just Rodda and Phillip who are starting, but even Swain and Salakai Aloto, who are the squad men. I'm sure that was a point of emphasis.
I don't think Salakai Aloto's in the squad this week.
Samu, okay, but I mean, even just in terms of the whole lock division, the brains trust, because they'll be looking at a great performance and a great win last week, that they did concede 3 maul tries in, and they have to play the same opposition this week. It's a concern.
It is, and it's not just that. Like, I do think the scrum might be an issue for them. Sure. I definitely don't think that they should be having loads of set pieces for the Boks, and that comes from just minding the ball. I mean, things can snowball on them if they're trying to do a lot of phase play against a very good defense. They're going to have to be very, very smart minding the ball. They're going to have to resource the rucks. They're going to have to be physical. They're also know that, like, things like drop balls or stupid going off your feet penalties could change this game.
Yes, indeed.
And that would be like, that's where
or one terrible high shot that they may be aggrieved about if it's a disgraceful red card, but don't hit someone in the head with your shoulder.
They've got to be tidy. They have got to be tidy, and that's down to guys like Swinton, and that's just that whole back row to work really, really hard for the whole game and try and outwork those Boks again, because that is a dangerous task.
100%. It is very, very tough. Those are the box office matchups, but like, just I'm still just looking forward to Tupou now. Tupou's going to get a start. We have Tupou versus the Boks Scrum. That is just Tupou, one for the purists.
Even Tupou versus Inyekanye. But personally, like, even just looking at it from a Bok point of view, like, they've brought Tupou in, but they've moved Bell to the bench. They've got Slipper out there at loosehead, with Fayangata. Like, that is, like, for me, with looking at Trevor Inyekanye coming in with Malherbe and Ebenezer Ori in a lock in the engine room, I still think that the Boks might get an edge there. I don't know if it'll be as decisive, but I think they will have the edge. I think I think Trevor Inyekanye is underrated. I think it could happen early. Like, I don't love it for the Wallabies. I don't love multiple scrums for the Wallabies. I think on their own line out they've been tidy enough, and they can be confident going there. But I don't think they want a lot of scrums in this game.
No.
From the Bok point of view, in terms of their model for winning this game, I mean, you say that the model won't change. I think the one thing that has to change this week is they just have to bring a lot more energy on defense and energy to the contact area. They do, at their very best, they love the contact area.
Yes.
And we've seen them manhandle Maro Itoje and Tyg Furlong and own that brilliant Lions team up front, just with really physical contacts. I don't know if they're a little worn or what, but they, like, when they're in Australia, they just don't bring that energy, and it is the model for this team, and they need it. They need to get out of the line. They need to, even guys like Karevi, they need to be just not allowing into the game. If they can get Karevi moving backwards or Valentini moving backwards off first or second phase, all of a sudden they could completely disrupt this Aussie attack and change the whole dynamic of the fixture.
Force them into a kicking contest that they feel more confident in, for sure. That is good. It's going to be step one. Like, the equation doesn't change that much, apart from, yes, you're talking about intent and intensity from minute one, but as far as the dynamics of the game, they're still going to kick to contest in the early goings. They're still going to try and apply their pressure defensively rather than offensively early on. So that'll involve a lot of kicking to smash and counter ruck, things like this. I just want to see a lot more accuracy, especially in the early exchanges. Things like exiting cleanly is something that, like, that is something that you can feel confident about fixing in a week, because it seemed like just a dialed out thing, particularly in the first half. They're just worked themselves into good positions. They spent 5 minutes of match time building phases, and then eventually getting a penalty as such that they're kicking a 3, and then they're just instantly giving it back by not exiting cleanly off the next phase.
Or even just they kicked a couple of them. Faf de Klerk had a couple of box kicks that just allowed the Wallabies to set up a line out on the 10, and then they need to be really dialed into that phase, and that really is where the Wallabies undid them, is that first and second phase off line outs. Dale Indy and Am have a huge job to really get on top of those Wallaby centres who outplayed them last week. They have a mind for defending, the pair of them. They'll probably be a little wounded. They'll probably know where things went wrong for themselves. They've got to come back, and for me it happens in the contact area. I mean, the reading of the game is pretty solid, but they were just a foot back from where they usually are when the contact happened for most of this game. They were a little flat-footed, and
likewise the back row, same equation. Normally very, very dynamic defenders all game, all the time, but they were outworked by their Wallaby counterparts in the last week, and it needs to be flipped on its head entirely from the Boks point of view this week. They need to rediscover some of their kind of mean edge and proactive kind of streak as far as defence is concerned, and then if they can, as you say, if they can smash Karevi early going,
and double team him, like with that try that he scored was like the first time that they consciously tried to bring a load of energy off the line, and Karevi's such a footballer that he noticed it's Faf running up at him. He just slips the tackle of Faf, and Am has bought in on the inside mistakenly. I know he's probably watched a lot of tape on the inside balls, but he got that one wrong. Like, they gotta have a mind for who the danger man is, and everything at the moment is going through Karevi. You need to shut him down. And I also think if you can get on top of them, you will find yourself in a position to get on top of Quade a little more, and either force him to kick it away or force him to take a contact.
That was it. Like, for a Bok team that are so mean and so ferocious and so physical, the fact that 33-year-old Quade, fresh into the game for his first time in a couple of years at test level, and he's playing the world champion Springboks, he barely took a shot all day. Barely at all did he even get. They didn't even lay a glove on him. And that is like obviously like great for a Wallaby point of view. It's like you can wrap him in cotton wool. That's something that they will be keen to fix this week.
I mean, if they smash him in a few tackles, he becomes way less likely to get 8 from 8 from the team.
Indeed, that's the same. Like, it's not just a Quade Cooper thing. That is just a halfback thing. If you're talking 9s and 10s, if you can get a few shots in on them, they're going to be a little bit rocked, especially if you can have it orchestrated such that it's a big Courtney Laws-esque smash of bisecting the halfback and just chopping him in half. Like, those are the kinds of smashes that we do like to see from the Springboks, the proactive, physical, abrasive, but clean. You know, again, you don't hit him high or hit him late. Don't make the kind of what Argentina were up to at the tail end of last week and the week before, like just throwing in cheap shots when the game's already done. No, being proactive in the first quarter if they can get a few shots in on D and just upset their rhythm, force them to kick, then suddenly they're into a Bok game. Because when we were talking about it, he who controls the tempo will win this game. It's easier to play a fast paced game down in Oz with the dry track, and that suits the Wallabies. But like, it is, I suppose it's tough to proactively slow it down, but they still have got to try.
You slow it down by dominant contacts and by getting on top of them. If you can stop them gaining advantage on the gain line in the first and second phase off set piece,
or you'll probably force the ball with a big tackle or something.
You'll force either a cheap kick or you'll be able to counter ruck effectively, which they weren't last week. I mean, their defensive ruck play last week was only ever came in out of desperation, after a line break. Vermeulen would try.
Vermeulen was trying it all day. He got one.
He never timed it at the right moment, though. It was always kind of that desperation play. But where the Boks defensive rucking looks so good is after they win a contact and stymie the Wallabies, and then they're a little slow back to fold. Then all of a sudden they come driving through the ruck. That's the kind of play that you need to see them do. It's an old formula, but it just comes from dominating the contact area, getting off the line, and not allowing the Wallabies any space. In the early goings, they did a decent job of not allowing any space, but they weren't able to maintain it, and Currie was causing them problems all day. I do think if they can just shut down that 10-12 axis and slow them down on the inside, the rest of their game plan will fall pretty neatly into place.
Indeed, it's a slow, patient, defensive oriented game for them, but it involves a few little kind of key little kind of goals, I suppose, mini goals throughout. One of which I would have is just exit cleanly after you consolidate your threes, don't cough up your gains so easily, which they did last week. But another one is the crowd control, because obviously it was their first time in front of any kind of crowd last week, and you could tell it did have a part to play in the outcome of the game. And this is Suncorp. It is the Wallaby spiritual home. You're going to want to do what any away team wants to do when they're going to a hostile atmosphere like that. Quiet the crowd and do so. Like the Bok game plan when they execute it is perfect at annoying rugby fans.
Rugby especially fans, Aussie rugby fans.
If you're turning the screw and slowly 3, 6, 9 and not coughing up 3 points after it, making those periods of
getting that Wallabies team to kick the ball away because they can't do anything else. That'll just get
a murmur going.
They hate that.
They do. So you want to be music to the Bok ears is after 30 minutes a disgruntled murmur rippling around Suncorp. It's a good goal to have because it is an achievable one. It involves taking your chances, exiting cleanly, being domineering and proactive on defense, and then trying to force the Wallabies to play a bit more of their game rather than chasing them at theirs,
or try and get them to force a pass that isn't on. I mean, if they haven't gained any inroads in the inside, we haven't seen that Quade, but I remember the last time we saw Quade, I know he's an older man and he seems much more mature now, but you know, if old school Quade, if you put him under pressure, heuld be likely to try something that's not on.
Well,
and that's where the guys
certainly if they were in the lead, they only took the lead, apart from when they went 6-3 up, they only managed to squeeze themselves back in front at the very death of the game. But like, if you can force Quade to have to chase the game, then somehow some more loose distribution can come out.
That's where Am goes to work.
Exactly. You would see. Well, the All Blacks were demonstrating how much that pass, that optimistic pass, is in the Wallabies' locker, and how defensive tries are there for the taking. You have to put them under a bit more pressure. To be honest, the All Blacks defended more like the Boks would expect to than the Springboks did in Test 1.
It was a very different game though. It was like the Wallabies played just a much better game than they ever played against the All Blacks in terms of minding the pill. They were just way sharper.
It's true, and they didn't take as many risks, as many risks, ridiculous kind of fanciful passes. They just didn't take them on as much.
They carried well, they picked their moments, and Samuel Currie was absolutely game changing.
Yes,
that is still a very fun matchup. Just looking ahead to how it will happen. Obviously, we've run through the squads, we've run through each team. How do you think this one is going?
Yeah,
obviously, there's Suncorp Juju versus Bok Backlash.
Yeah, though that is exactly what's flipping in my head. I don't quite know who to back in this instance. I do believe in the Suncorp Juju. I definitely do. I think they play. I can't deny it. It has statistical evidence to back it up. But I also do believe in this Bok team. I really do. I think they have more in them certainly than they showed last week, and I do think they have a
Razzie to get them to run through walls. This is it's definitely a factor. Like, he was there on the touchline, and it made a difference. Like, does he just give them that extra bit of energy? Because one of the things that you notice about the Boks at their best is that their workload is freakish.
Yeah.
Like, it's freakish, the amount they get through, the speed that they can maintain on defence, the incredible physicality on their goal line, just the unwillingness to concede.
And then their set piece organisation and dominance.
It's all so spectacular. And first of all, does it struggle on the dry track in Australia? And second of all, does it is it maintainable? And without Razzie there, are they going to just fall into the trap of being a little more loose and a little less ferocious than they can be? And that could be enough against a quality Wallaby team.
And at their spiritual home, I don't know. I think it'll be a one-score game either way. I think we're in for another humdinger, to be honest. I think these two teams, just styles make matchups, and this is always a good game. Even going back to, was it 2017, the year of the two draws, home and away for both of them, and it's just... for two teams that play such contrasting styles, they do come up honours even a lot of the time. And then in Australia, that scales is firmly tipped in favour of the Wallabies. I am going to back the world champion Springboks to get the better of them this time and keep their drive for the Rugby Championship alive
and break the 5 year
run in Suncorp. Yeah, I think if they're going to do it, it's going to be another one-score game decided by a kick here and there. But I think I'm backing that we'll see a different South Africa this time around, and I'm hopeful that we see the same Australia, because I loved seeing that Australia. I would love to see both teams at their very, very best going toe to toe and seeing what happens then.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, but again, I'm like yourself, I'm between two minds on it. I do think the Wallabies, I think a lot depends on whether Dale Indy can get a grip on Currie at 12.
That's true. Yeah,
I've never seen him lose so many contacts, and if that happens again, they are going to be disoriented again. So that is the picture for the Wallabies. But I think, like yourself, I do put stock in the Bok ability to respond. I think they know they need a big performance, and usually
even the three maul tries they managed to get themselves back in. Like, there was no way
they shouldn't have won that.
They shouldn't have been 2 points off in that game. They were like closer to 10 points worse.
Yeah, and one defensive try, like, we'll probably chalk off what the Wallabies are trying to produce with the quality of that Bok defense. So that would give you hope that the Boks would do it, but it's very, very tight.
It's very tight. Who do you have? Are you thinking Wallabies? Are you thinking Springboks? Are you thinking Suncorp Juju? Or are you thinking Quade Cooper just can't miss? I don't know. Let us know in the comments down below who you got. But that is definitely the main show this weekend. Wallabies versus Springboks.
Oh, it'll be a juicy one. Listen, with that, we are going to move on.
Yes, next up we're going to swivel our attention to the All Blacks and the Pumas. From one point of view, it was a great game. From another point of view, it was quite a miserable experience. From the neutral point of view, it was kind of a foregone conclusion looking at it throughout. It was All Blacks 39-0 for the Pumas. That was at Cbus Stadium last Sunday as well. The first of the double header, the curtain raiser. It played out as a curtain raiser kind of thing. It was just, it was disappointing. Like, I remember I was watching it with you. I didn't actually see it live. I couldn't do it, so I was watching it the day after, and you'd already seen it, and we were just watching through the first half, and I'm looking at it going like, geez, Argentina, they play a great nil, don't they? They really, really do. Like, they're hustling great on D. They're containing this mighty All Black side for large periods. It's just a shame they don't want to use the ball at all.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the story. Like, they just
spent the whole game defending around their 22.
Yeah, they're defending the red zone and doing it really well. Like, cleanly for most of it. Like, the 39 was just the tries they scored. That doesn't tell the story of all the tries that were stopped by brilliant, innovative defence. But yeah, geez, like they are offering less than nothing. Like I think their performance was typified. I was cutting them slack. I was kind of enjoying just the novelty of their nil and how long it was going to last. But then on I think it was 39 minutes and 20 seconds were on the clock, and it was just before half time. That crucial period that we're talking about, just before half time, and it was Argentina with the line out. They had a line out in the middle third. They won clean ball off the top. They gave it to the 10. He just dropped it, chipped it, like to no one. There was not even a chase. He just chipped it on first phase to the All Blacks with 30 seconds of gameplay left on it, and you know what happens. They go up the other end and they score a try because that's what they do. And they got everything they deserved from that, from what I can gather.
You're right to highlight the Pumas in terms of just the watching of the game. It did take away from the spectacle of it. And we will talk about the Pumas as well, but for me the headline of the game as well is just how good this All Black team looked like compared to last year.
True.
And they're very, very good. They are persistent with their offense. They're so sharp in terms of their tracking line runs, and then just their willingness to play free flowing attacking rugby on the turnover. They're picking great lines off one another. They're sticking most of their passes, and they're patient. Like the Pumas were holding them out in parts, but they knew that they'd break them. They knew that eventually they'd keep going if they kept persisting with their attack, and they are staying true to themselves. They are not leaning on their physicality. It's there. Their line out is possibly the best line out in the world at the moment. It's so sharp both on offense and defense, but they're not leaning on it. They're leaning on their offense. That's where they want to go to work,
which is much more of an All Black mold, and Foster is fostering that great culture in it. And like you can see that by the personnel changes, comparing this to the historic win for Argentina 25-15 last year. But it was nowhere near the same All Black outfit, and I think it's typified by, like, they did do a chop and change, and obviously Mo'unga not available, Aaron Smith not available, and he's actually not going to be available for the rest of the tournament. But when you look at the 3/4 line, and you have, was it Barrett with Havili and
Linnett Brown,
was it Linnett Brown that last week?
Yeah, it was. It was Rico.
No, it was Rico. That's what I was thinking, and I'm like, is there a more pacey midfield in World Rugby than that? Like, you'd factor Bowden, who's rapid at 10. Like, he could play 13, and then Rico at 13 is freaky fast.
And
they
just kept probing. They minded the ball. They weren't stupid with their offloads. They weren't wide necessarily. Like, sometimes you didn't need to be physical, but constantly they were trying to get quick ruck ball and just good matchups for their attacking weapons, and they kept trying to find it, and for large parts it didn't happen, but ultimately, as this team does, they found it, and when they found it they just kept finding it. I mean, I think it was the period between 33 and 47 minutes either side of half time, which we know is classic All Black time. That 14-minute period of match play yielded 22 points. It brought them from 7-0 up to 29-0 up and game over, as it so often does. The pressure in the early parts of the game told brilliantly, and they're really exciting me now, the All Blacks. They're putting it all together. Parts of their game weren't quite right. I still think they're a little weak at front row when they have to chop and change, like the likes of Moody still being in there is a little dodge, and even Tuna Guafe, like
he actually had a rough first half when the rest of them he was banded, was leaking blood after like 2 minutes, and he came on with a scrum cap, and then he was twisted a few times,
But Bauer seems to be the man who's going to start at loose end for them, but they still have a few perhaps problems in the front row going forward, but most of the time their engine room and its ferocity bails them out of any issues there. But then it's just generally just the way they move the ball is so crisp, and they have the physicality to mind the pill at ruck time. They don't give away a lot of offensive penalties. They're very clean, and then
they work great from their back row as well.
And
like guys like Blackadder getting in and doing a great job. The standard not dipping. I think Papali'i has had a great series this far. Has had a great year as well. Like he's just they have and obviously that's burying the league because Sevilla has been making headlines, and Akira Ioane have just been like they have a spoiled for choice in the back row in terms of their options, and all of them like have a serious work rate and work ethic both with and without the ball. So it's a lot of those guys who are doing a lot of the work that doesn't get seen, and very often they can get disregarded, but they are a match for anyone in the tight, and then it's in their offense is just more than a match for everyone at the moment. Just the amount of scores. I don't know if any other team is racking up 39 against this Argentina D.
No way.
Argentina defended really well. That's the other side of it. They conceded 39 points, but they defended really well. The lesson here is just you can't defend the All Blacks for 80 minutes and not concede points.
Not concede loads of points, because that's what they'll do. But some of the tries in particular, the ones with just quick taps off penalties, generating chaos play, like they're really backing themselves these days, and they're sticking all of their passes. They're instincts are just so sharp, and then that married with their talent, it's like, how can it not concede? They just need to create as many chaos moments as possible and they'll score points. And I love the quick tap as a means to do that. I just love the fact that they're trying to destructure the game more than structure the game in their favour. And I think it's potentially a box stopping model for them, and they seem on a crash course to claim their number one spot as undisputed best in the world by the end of the year, which I didn't see coming at the start of the year. I thought it'd be tougher for them. I thought they were going to get on the path, especially listening to Foster in the off season, but I thought it might take them a little longer. But man, they have just gone from strength to strength. The schedule has really helped them this year. They've built nicely
from the Tonga tonking through the Fiji good tests, through Bledisloe, and now into this,
which is like a diet Springbok approach.
Indeed,
like
a little dry track there, just defending them over and over again, kicking them the ball so that they can defend some more. Now the Boks will offer a lot more in terms of this. Like Argentina were very frustrating in terms of what they were doing. Their
defense isn't proactive either. Unlike the Boks, they defend their red zone very well, but they don't quite have the same kind of kick chase where you can see it yielding points for them. And even when they go for jackal steals, which they did constantly and illegally, like it's always on the back foot. They're always kind of reaching over a ruck after soaking up some pressure, trying to get a backs to the wall turnover. It's never that kind of proactive, we've knocked you back, now we're pouring over, now we're going to have the ball. And then, as you say, when they have the ball, they are just they don't know what to do with it. It seems like the mistake that Ledesma's making right now is that he thinks that a solid set piece and defense is enough to win games, probably based on the evidence of last year. But he's so that is a foundation on your game, and it's a great foundation. They have a solid set piece and a really good defense. They got to do something with it. They are just not doing anything when they get the ball.
It's refusing to. And it's a weird collective thing, because it's tough to even single out anyone to blame. It's a massive kind of mindset thing, because you have guys like that backline is littered, and even the guys who don't make it, the whole squad is littered with talented backs, but there's no shape. And when they go one phase and it's one out from the ruck and they carry, and like even if they win that collision, which they did a lot of the time, like Matera goes over the gain line or Kramer goes over the gain line and the scrum half's there, but there's no shape. They're just kind of ambling into an attacking shape, whereas the defensive line has already scrambled in to be ready to stop them. There's no proactive attacking shape, there's no pattern, and then even when they do try and spin it wide, like their passing is just not sharp, and it's tough to know
their
whether
passing is not sharp, and they just don't run sharp screen shapes. They don't run
a lot at all. Like when they're off the ball, and even when they're folding into shape, they're just not even jogging. It's bizarre to see a team that has such intent on defense and like just no intent on offense. None at all.
Especially bizarre in the context of broader South American rugby, which is so on the rise at the moment with a distinctive offensive style.
Yeah, and even Argentina 15, whenever they take the field, tend to play a quite flowy, attacky brand of rugby, and it's like the tempo is all wrong from them with ball in hand at the moment.
They need to discover it. They need to rediscover something, because it was so far from right. And they got exactly what they deserved. For having a good defence, but nothing else, you're still going to get absolutely smacked.
Literally zero.
Not a problem with their defence, not one issue I would point with their defence.
Like 39-0, you could say defensively we were all over the place, but no, the nil is the factor there more so than the 39.
They didn't spend any time in the All Blacks half. They didn't spend any time with the ball. They didn't threaten with the ball. They didn't get the All Blacks thinking about anything other than eventually breaking down this defence.
Yes.
So it was all wrong.
Foregone conclusion very early on. The first half was pretty much the game. It came a little unstuck even towards the tail end of the second in terms of some chopping and changing, and the scoring slowed down a little bit and all of that. It was the usual. The All Blacks had iced the game.
They did it as they do between 33 and 44 minutes. In that period, they scored 22 points. In the entire rest of the game, outside of that 14 minutes, I think they scored 17.
There you go.
So they outscored themselves in that little 14-minute pocket, as they do, but the pressure told, and then the rest of it was just a drill where they were trying to break down the Pumas defence, and they did ultimately.
Yes, they did, and I'm sure they're grateful for such an offensive probing drill that they got multi-phase prep for facing tougher tasks ahead. But from Ledesma and Cheika's point of view, because Cheika's in that coaching panel as attack coach, I don't know if his word is getting through. I don't know what his stamp is, but
there's no evidence. The evidence, apart from him in the coach's box, you wouldn't know that he would be involved at all.
Indeed, there's no shape, there's no intent, there's no tempo. He has lots of track record of creating innovative attacking teams, be it through Leinster originally, and then even when he was with Stade Francais, he had some interesting attacking shapes with the Wallabies, like thinking of them carving through England in that World Cup on their run.
Always attack.
They always knew their way around an offensive set, and Cheika himself emphasises
the Pumas are similarly modelled. The Pumas, they love getting their wingers involved off their wing, picking inside balls. Sanchez vibes off that kind of distribution game. They love running screens. They love going wide. They're built to attack in a lot of ways.
The Jaguares got to a Super Rugby final playing lovely attacking brand as well.
They've kind of phased all of that out, de-emphasised it entirely, and just focused on the defence. Now they've guys like Kramer in there who is an incredible defensive workhorse, but can't catch a ball, and there doesn't seem to be any evidence that they're working on that. His handling is quite clumsy. But as you know, if you get Pat Lam or someone in charge of that team and that guy, you turn him into a superstar just by working on it. Reps.
Yeah.
He's not like dyspraxic. He just doesn't focus on it.
Yeah.
And you can absolutely through training and drilling.
Sure. The Connacht model is the evidence of the Pat Lam thing. You come into Connacht and they're a totally inept force that are focused on dragging the game down into the dirt, but ball handling.
John Muldoon, he was a put it up the jumper man until Pat Lam came to
and then
Connacht.
suddenly he's channeling his inner Fijian. Who knew you had a Fijian in you all along?
I know Kramer could be that player with the right coaching, and at the moment I don't see that he's getting it. But anyway, Ledesma, in his defence, had some remarks after the game. He basically sought to put the blame on a lack of preparation time. So his explanation was basically that after the July tour they went on their summer holidays, and he was saying, obviously, as a consequence of COVID and everything else, they've lost their Super Rugby. He says 90% of our players, if not more, that started today are playing in the Northern Hemisphere, and we are competing in the Southern Hemisphere. These guys finished their season a month ago or a little bit more. Then they played the July tests. Then they went on holiday. And then when we came back from holiday, we just had 4 training sessions before the South African game. So all of a sudden, the first pre-season game that normally you'd be playing for the Jaguars or the Jaguares, you were now playing against the world champion Springboks.
Yeah.
And that was his defence of, not defence, that was sort of him his assessment of what's gone wrong. I don't know, do you buy that explanation as a reason why they just aren't doing anything with the ball?
No, I don't. I do buy it as an explanation as to why it's looked a bit more of a mismatch than we know it should be, because we know Argentina are a bloody good team, but as you highlight, it's mid-cycle in the World Cup cycle, they'll be game come World Cup year. But as far
as they address their problems,
that's it in terms of just the pitch of the battle. But I do accept part of what he's saying there, as far as we've seen it before. Argentina, I've seen stats of Matera, who's circumnavigated the globe several times in a season of rugby because of the amount of travel that they tend to do, and it can upset their ability to get up for the pitch of the match and stuff. And we've seen that with Argentina teams over the years. The travel, you have things like quarantine and stuff. Upset preparations don't tend to serve them well, whereas when they can getting camped in one location for a month plus and then go into a tournament, they're better served for it. That's all true, but it doesn't explain why when they have the ball they're not able to and not trying to do anything with it. And they've scored, what is it? They got one last ditch Matera try in one of the games against South Africa to pad this score, but they are now sitting on 13 points through 3 games that they've scored,
and they haven't registered a point against the All Blacks since that upset win. Sanchez's late goal kick to make it 25-15. Still the last point they scored in 2 games.
They played twice against the All Blacks, nil both times, and in the Rugby Championship, not only do they have no table points, they've literally scored 13 points in match play, and it's through 3 rounds, and it's just. That's never, ever going to be enough to win any games of rugby.
Ledesma did have this quip to offer on the discipline issues. I think they just conceded a stock 18 penalties and 2 yellow cards, which is about par.
That's
for
about
this
par.
Team. But he had this quip to offer. He says, "I'm saying what I'm saying. I'm saying we were ill-disciplined. I'm not putting any videos on the internet or any stuff like that. I'm fine. If I have some issues with the refs, I'll tell the refs." So a little shot at Razzie.
So a little dig there coming in, everyone piling in on good old Razzie. That's a good way to obfuscate and to try and deflect some of the blame by diffusing some of that tension. But no, it will have to zero back around to self-focus. Yes, they were loose in their discipline, but that was forced. They were... you're not going to be able to just do a defensive drill against this mighty All Black team for 80 minutes and not kind of keep them out and also not concede a ball out of penalties, because you'll be floundering and flapping and chasing shadows on occasion. Pictures like this of Bowden Barrett scything through as your very physical but outmatched guy is just flapping after
how good was that play from Bowden off the tap, off
delicious.
the quick tap, but then just off that second play, just whizzing his way through in classic Bowden fashion and finding just an awesome cheat
pass.
code rugby again out the back door.
Cheat code rugby, as you say. Someone's hacked the game. It was absolutely a thing of beauty. One of the the main highlight reel moment from a match that otherwise is kind of, there's not much to write home about. They kicked a 3 to go one better than 38-0 last time. It's 39-0 they did this time.
Which was a good little psychological edge. It was all smiles on the Foster side of things. He was saying his assessment of the match was pretty clinical and patient are the words I'd use, which aren't adjectives I'd normally use to describe an All Black win, but I'm delighted with it. If you look at their track record, they're a hard team to score against. They know their defensive system well, and they go to whatever lengths to try and stop you from getting a flow. And I like the fact that we stuck to what they were doing. We made them make a lot of tackles and ultimately got really good reward on the scoreboard. So overall, very happy, and that was his assessment.
I agree wholeheartedly with that assessment. I think there's very little to disagree with there. It was a dominant win from the All Blacks, and one they can be very, very happy with going into this week.
Absolutely.
Where we do have the reverse fixture going on. We have technically Argentina at home. I don't know if that'll help them in terms of juju or in terms of positivity, but it is once again at Seabus Stadium.
No, this one's in Suncorp.
Oh, it's at Suncorp as well. Sorry,
it's
we're double
headering
again. Yeah, so Suncorp this week, and it's going to be kickoff. I think 11:05. So it's the second game, is it?
Yeah. Will the Wallaby and Springbok fans stay to watch it?
Jeez, it's a good question. I don't know the answer. I hope so. I hope so. But I don't know. I don't know so. I think the referee is Jaco. Jaco Piper is the man in the middle from South Africa. Thoroughly neutral. Just as far as colour, from the Pumas' point of view, pride is at stake. There's no dressing up just how ugly this has been for them this campaign so far.
And there's a bit of pressure on Ledesma now. There's just a little bit coming out now from Argentina fans who in all sports are very passionate and reactive and don't tolerate what they perceive to be dropping the standard,
unacceptable,
humiliated, and even if you don't watch the game, 39-0 is such an ugly scoreline, and you can see it's not for want of trying, so they're going to have to try and put something together, and for them it really is just about building the framework for what will become this Pumas side. And I still think, on a positive note, that they have a great baseline. But they need to build
a lot of teams that like even when you look at Italy, which is obviously a few levels below, but you're looking at Italy for so many years thinking they're getting better at passing the ball, but my God, I don't even know if their defensive system's any good because they just keep missing tackles. They just keep missing first up tackles and they're straight through. The Argentinians have none of those issues that normally affect a lot of teams that are on the developing trail. Their defence is rock solid. Their set piece has improved enormously from when Ledesma has taken control, but their intent and ability with ball in hand is shocking. Shocking at the minute, especially when you consider what they used to be about way back when. Pre-World Cup, pre-Ledesma, it was a kind of a weak spine of the team. They were soft defensively, but they could carve you open in a heartbeat. The team that beat Ireland in that World Cup in 2015, they were a wide sensation. They were tempo, they were attack, they were flair, they were wingers, Cordero and the like.
Cordero's still playing as well.
A lot of the same guys out there, but not looking in any way the same entity. They need to start kind of building framework for how to attack. It is still 2 years out from the World Cup, which is everyone's goal. But you want to see seeds of optimism, and for a start, getting 0 off the board early on would be a good place to start for them.
For sure, and just obviously they still have 3 games left in this tour. Hopefully they're not mentally on the flight home. I mean, they have been at the pitch of the game. They'll need to be again because the All Blacks are still the All Blacks, and from their point of view it is just about maintaining the standard. They have new personnel in this week. We'll run through the squads in a moment, but it just consistent excellence is the bar for this team. And the rate of progression this year has been stunningly quick in terms of turning around where they were last year.
It's night and day.
The skill set, the framework from Aotearoa and all of that grassroots excellence in New Zealand has just been fostered by Fozzie Bear.
Yes, and, indeed. It's been paying some serious dividends. I know some of the guys, I think Aaron Smith was was calling foul about Aotearoa and the pressure from them to kind of scrap Aotearoa, just because it was so tough for the guys involved, because they're tough games every single week. There's no layoff. There's no chance to whoop the Rebels this week. He's
just a little bored, Aaron Smith. He doesn't like the same thing. He was talking this week about how he really wants to go against DuPont.
Yeah,
he's watching the game globally, and he wants to go around the world and tour and do all that stuff. But from the All Blacks point of view, I think this year has been just very, 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 very positive so far, and it's about not slipping up, keeping being the offensive team. And I think,
and it could, as much as the second game, so there's potential if the Wallabies do them a favour that they could be icing the tournament in this game as well.
Right,
so that'll dial them into that as well. If they can get this sewn up before they even meet the world champs, then that'll be A1. They've put themselves in prime position to do so.
Absolutely, yeah, and they're also, they've rotated a bit, so they'll have a few guys from the squad channeling for test jerseys. Just to look at the two squads now, we do have them both. Argentina is perhaps the more interesting one. They've named their team, and kind of in keeping with our calls, they've changed it up a little bit. They've got Santiago Carreras at 10. Yeah, he's a guy who played 10 at junior level, but he's now like a winger come fullback.
That's right.
And into the 10 shirt he goes. That's exciting for me. I just think I love a bit of speed out there. They've got
because Malia, who's played 10, is at 15 as well. So it's him and Malia out there.
And Chocobaras as well, who's a guy I think they could throw at 10. Like, I thought benching him last week was just the weakest sauce from Ledesma. Like, he's your most skilled player. He's the only guy on your team who thinks offense first.
Yes,
and so
it cost him his jersey thinking offense first.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love to see him back in there with a guy like Cinti, who's brand new, coming into the team. Cordero and Buffelli is still danger on the wings. Like, the back line is very nice. Obviously, Bruni unfortunately picked up a knock last week, so Matera goes to 8, Kramer back in at 7, and then Juan Martin Gonzalez gets to go up blindside. Lavanini unfortunately comes in for into the locks. He's still not banished, but I mean, listen, if he can ever mind, I just don't believe he ever will, but if he can ever mind the discipline issues, he's still a ferocious unit.
He is.
Alamano in there with him, and then a front row of Gigena, Montoya and Medrano. Gigena coming in for this week, so they're actually a little light at loose head, really and truly, but hopefully they can get a job done and keep it even goings. It's definitely an interesting team. I like the aggression of it. It reads more offensive.
It does.
Some of these squads have read offensive and not been so. This team needs to be so.
It's true. Also, just on the Lavanini thing, I think it's Petty's kind of forced their hand. Petty's now on the bench, but it's just he keeps doing the Lavanini role, giving away needless penalties all the time.
It's been awful, hasn't he?
He has, and he's normally such a stalwart for them, and he would be like, I'd be leaning towards Petty Alamano / Petty Kramer for them, but he's been a problem thus far, so he recedes off to the bench. But hopefully, as you say, the Lavanini factor will just be positive smashes and no kind of reckless high shots or ludicrous yellow cards coming from him, which it's a toss of a coin which one we see.
I mean, it'll probably happen at some stage. Given the fact that they're likely to lose, he probably will get frustrated and hit a black jersey off the ball at some point.
Damien McKenzie smashed around the head, something along those lines.
The All Blacks have also gone choppy changey. They've gone. They've brought DMAC into 10, so a couple of headlines really in the 10 shirt. DMAC against Carreras isn't necessarily what you would have thought. They've given Quinn Tupaya, who came off the bench, a shot in the 12 shirt, so a rest for Havili this week, who has owned that 12 shirt. Rico partners him in the middle, and then a lightning back three of Bridge, Jordan and Jordy Barrett. And then good to see as well, all changes in the back row. Ethan Blackadder gets a start, Artie Savia comes back in to start, and then Hoskins Satutu gets a first run at the 8 shirt.
We haven't seen him this year, and he is awesome. He was one of the breakout stars of last year. Another just fantastic unit that they have available to them in the back row.
He's one of those guys who hasn't quite dialed in the toughness to play test rugby just yet. He's possibly a little loose, and just for a man of his size probably doesn't sit down enough on his carries or his tackles.
But then that's something that will come. That's a little bit like early going Jack Conan. You know, Jack Conan, when he broke on the scene, was a very skillful number 8 who was a little bit behind the pecking order because of perceived size and perceived physicality. Like, now he's a very physical lion a few years later, going toe to toe with the Boks. So
Satutu's ceiling very, very high.
Very skillful player.
And Tui Pilatu, who has been a forgotten man, gets a chance to come back in and stake a claim at the deep lock stocks that they have. Tupo Vai as well in with him, and then a front row, an experimental enough front row to be honest, of Joe Moody, Taugiaho and Tyrrell Lomax. So a few changes
for Lomax. It's something. It's like, the Argentinians should be looking at that, thinking they might be able to get something off at set piece.
They should, but there is danger on the bench, however.
Yes.
The front row has almost a Springbok read to it of Bauer, Tuamafasi and Cody Taylor. Like, that's a meaty front row to bring on.
Yeah, that's as bomb squaddy as bomb squads come.
With Scott Barrett and Luke Jacobson as well. And then they also have, of course, Bowden Barrett on the bench. If things go wrong, they can bring Bodie on.
And Finlay Christie, I believe, getting on the bench as well. It'd be good to see him out there. Another just class scrum half that I really do envy. It's really, actually, I've dialed it in. It's New Zealand and France who I envy right now, because I think halfbacks in Ireland could improve, and I love their stock at halfback. I just love the average club level halfback in New Zealand is just so high. The ceiling's so high. Finlay Christie's had a great season for the last 2 or 3 seasons. He's been pretty consistent. It's just the fact that you have TJ Perenara and Aaron Smith, and you have Brad Weber, and all of these guys who are kind of just in your way for these jerseys, but he's a top level scrummy as well, so it'd be good to see him get a run out as well. For sure.
And Braden Enner on the bench as well, with a chance to for a rare appearance from him too. So a few changes from New Zealand. Looking at the game from the point of view of each teams, obviously we've discussed the Pumas really at length in this, but just to briefly almost go back as well, just with all of these new names in there, it does need to be about developing an attack. I mean, obviously they're going to need to arrive at the pitch, they're going to need to defend. They know the All Blacks are going to bring offense to them, but if they can defend as gamely as they have done and get an edge at set piece in the early goings, which they might, probably not at line out, but certainly at scrum
they can have a cut.
They can have a cut, but it's really about developing the attack, and that's all I'm going to be looking for is what they're doing with the ball. And all it'll take is just a few things, just as you say, quicker to fold. They need to get into some kind of shape, come on, when the forwards are carrying, come onto the ball.
That's what's weird. Like there was a set last week where they were trying to kind of smash through them, but it was off 9 and it was quick, and the guy carrying was game. You'd have like Kramer hits, Matera hits, and someone else hits, and it's like all 3 of them won their contact. What's the plan? What's next? And it's like another guy hits, and it's like, but you've already earned the right to go wide. You sat them all down. Where are you going next?
And sometimes the All Blacks, like Rico was doing a good job of cutting out the outside last week, but that's where you can use the boot. Like, all of these guys have such footballing ability, but Carreras in a 10, also like Chocobaras has a very high ceiling as a player as well. He's a potential star. And I think like using his kicking game, if Rico's shutting down the outside, just working a bit of space to allow you to put some plays together with the ball to either edge some more territory than you had last week, or edge some attacking opportunities for yourselves, but just to not, like, to find ways with the ball to not end up defending your 22 for the whole game, albeit through kicks that are on the front foot that you can work a bit of space in, maybe even take on a 50-22 or something like that.
I don't mind that.
Or just through ball in hand, where you're winning a few contacts and having a cut because you know they can. But all of that takes shape, and it takes like a change in mindset on offense to be speedy and proactive.
And as opposed to just a bit passive and pedestrian, which is just never going to be good enough to break down even a modest test level defense. Even your kind of Scotland defenses will gobble them up what they're doing right now, where let alone, like we're in the Rugby Championship here, they're all very, very good defenses. You need to up your game to try and break them down, and you're not just going to smash through them with one out carries. You're definitely not going to do that against these All Blacks. So finding inroads that way, like, I'd like to see some evidence of patterns and plays. Like, they go off the top of the line out and do something with it that isn't just give it to the 10 to chip it to the All Blacks, which they did at the tail end of the last half. Like, that's just, what are you doing? Like, I'd love to see them send a centre down that hard line, maybe hit someone up Matera the next phase, and then on the third phase, try and do something. Like, try and find a set piece. I'd like to see some evidence of Cheika's playbook.
We've seen them score tries against the All Blacks before. It's not an unheard of thing, and the All Black defense, while it is very good, not unplayable. They need to develop an offense. The other thing I would ask them to do as well is just to be mindful, as all teams against the All Blacks should, is just be mindful of those moments before half time. Understand when the clock ticks past 32, 33 minutes that this is where the All Blacks want to get you. In the next 15 minutes, they're going to be coming at you like a freight train.
So if you can hold the ball, if you can do a Joe Schmidt's Ireland on it and go through 42 phases and hold the ball and play out the clock, fine, perfect. If you can pin them back in the corners, Ronan O'Gara style, try and find corners, 50-22s, pin them back. That's a good cut.
You've got to be so stingy in those minutes. You've got to frustrate them, and it will disorient them a little if they can't do what they usually do in and around half time.
Well, they've done it every game this year.
I think so,
I'm pretty sure they've scored a try just before half-time in every game this year, from Tonga to Fiji to Australia to now Argentina. They are just putting the game away either side of half-time. So how you can not expect that from a preparation point of view. I understand that you're tired at the tail end. You see a lot of teams do the opposite, where it's like play a good 30. The Springboks are guilty of it. Play a good first 30 minutes of a half and then kind of switch off towards the tail end.
Michael Hooper's worst error of the whole season this year was after they scored a try before half time themselves off the restart. He jumped offside on a box kick and gave the All Blacks a chance to score a try before half time,
which they did,
which they always will do. So like little things like that you just can't do. And like you've rightly pointed out, the little dink from Sanchez with a few minutes to go, just failing to
absolutely criminal.
Failing to understand that who you're up against. Like in a lot of games you will get away with that and the other team will just take it and run through a few phases.
If they were playing Ireland, I'd be like, no worries.
Both teams will agree to take half time together.
Indeed.
The All Blacks are not
going to do that.
If you give them a sniff, they will kill you. So just recognising that and then also developing an offence. Those are my only two notes.
If they could score at least one try, that'd be very nice. But even at 3 point, they can get the donut off the board, kick a 3 early and be done with it, because it is a monkey on their back now. They're going. The All Blacks will be thinking it. They'll be going like, going for a hat-trick of nils here against these boys, and they'll fancy it, because the Pumas have offered very little on offense so far. So hope to see more from them in this match. Just attack. Attack.
And from the All Black point of view, obviously a few guys in there with opportunities. DMAC going at 10 is interesting.
That's interesting. We've seen him there before. He'll probably get a few more three. It was a curious bit of trivia when he kicked that 60-metre 3-pointer in one of the Bledisloe tests, that it was actually his first 3 points for the All Blacks. I'd imagine that'll change this week.
Unless they give Geordie the tee.
This is possible.
I do like DMAC as a place kicker. He showed in Aotearoa that he's well able for it, but it's much of a muchness. One of the things that they will have to do is not be like crazy wide where they like sometimes when DMAC slots into first receiver, he just wants to throw the skip pass, and usually he's kind of listing to the outside anyway. So they will need someone like Tupaya or Rico to just pick hard lines off him to sit down the Pumas defense. They know what they're doing on offense. They like they bust up and then go, but they'll probe blind sides. Like the one of the clever innovations they did the last time was just keep working the blind side, just to knock them out of sync a little bit. But they'll probe the blind side, they'll probe the open side, they'll try and punch through the middle, they'll try and punch to the outside, and the second they find a good matchup and get the better of them, they're in and they'll find a try. And that's very much what this team is like. There is scope for them to be just a little. Like if they get caught with their pants down, they're just a little wide and they're not getting through, and then they're losing scrum battles, and then there are a few penalties down.
Even if they're knocked back a little bit in contact and open play, sometimes TJ's passing can be a little more erratic than Smith's, and then if his passing's erratic to DMAC, who's maybe a little less confident at 10, there's definitely potential for a game Argentina to upset them and stymie them in a chop and change kind of thing. But they will be confident in their ability to outlast the Pumas and ultimately to get the scores they need to see them home. And that confidence will probably lend itself to a bit more composure and calm. That even when things are going a little bit awry in the moment, they can kind of have a macro sense of it's okay. We got this.
They're attacking better these days, and they just adding tempo. If ever they're getting stuck, they just need to add some tempo and then just win the territory battle as well. So that when they are stuck and the Pumas are maybe winning some penalties, that it's all taking place in their half. So little kicks, if their offense isn't quite working, will do wonders. And then
even or don't shy away from an early 3-pointer. Like they won't. They won't. Like they'll happily, and as the Boks demonstrated in terms of the Boks way of beating Argentina earlier on, like Argentina will try and play a 3-pointer game if you let them, but generally you're going to create more scoring chances than they are on the balance of play. So chipping them over just 3 points is almost as good as 5 or 7 against this team, because scores are so seemingly tough to come by for them, particularly against this All Blacks. So where you can exert scoreboard pressure, do so, but also have that in the back of your mind that ultimately the chances will come. And you are highlighting that their time is from just before half time to just after half time. That's when all of that probing pressure and all of that offensive headache that you try and create ultimately ends up yielding scores in that period.
It's true. It is a big job for the forward pack. There are a few new heads in there. Moody and Lomax will need to scrum hard. True. I think Tui Pilatu, who's been starved of minutes this year,
he's another big super unit. Player. He was excellent last year.
He was, and he needs to come in and have a big performance. Even Tupou Vai as well. Like you could see it going wrong if they're disoriented somewhere, and then all of a sudden they're not finding the ins. And the Pumas defense can be a tough nut to crack and cause you to panic. Like I still think that bench that will come in will see them home precisely because the Pumas don't score enough.
Yeah.
But ideally they want to not take a step backwards but take a step forwards, as they have been doing all year, and that comes from just getting on top of the Pumas. These guys could bring energy as much as they could bring disjointedness, and that's what they need to do. They need to come in with just a bundle of energy, offer nothing on defense, and then on offense just adding that muscle that the Pumas know that they aren't going to be able to knock them back, and that slowly and surely
it'll be on guys, actually, even guys like Ethan Blackadder, who's in on merit. It's great to see him getting a run out, but he'll have to kind of mirror some of what Papali'i's been bringing in terms of just work rate in the tight, to allow for Sevilla or whomever to be, like Artie Sevilla's in there, to be a little wider, to be roaming in the wide channels. Tutu as well, where he is excellent in the tram lines in the back line. He's one of those like loose back row forwards, very much in that Kieran Reid mould that they're very well used to, who's going to win a contact out wide and get a pass away either side,
as a Kirioani's been doing.
Indeed. So they'll want to be able to afford him that chance, and that'll involve like serious shifts from those guys you're mentioning, Blackadder, Tui Pilatu in the lock, like even like Lomax and stuff, in terms of ruck resources, not just the set piece, but like doing your job in terms of minding the breakdown, all of that, because you're aware of the defensive threat that Argentina are. And they are, like, when you're trying to attack, especially if you're a chop and change team, if you're a little loose, this Puma team are hungry enough on D that they will catch you at either the breakdown or in the contact area. Yeah, they can make you suffer when you have the ball if you're a little bit off. But ultimately, I think they'll have that confidence that even if it's going awry for 5 or 10 minutes, or they have periods where it's a little sloppy, that ability to score and that backing of their skill set and their will to attack will ultimately see them through, because I think it'll just usher in that calm. Like, even if they go behind, which is like something that I can't really envisage, but if they're 3 or 6-0 down, like, it could happen. No worries, that could happen, but no worries. Like, there's a team that are so on a confident streak right now that even if they were 2 scores down, which I really can't envisage happening, but if it is to come to pass, I would still have faith in their ability to come back into it. Yeah,
maybe. I definitely think that'd be an interesting picture for the young team.
I would love to see it.
How do you think it'll go? What's your same just copy paste the last game?
Yeah, I'm gonna hope, and I'm gonna back Argentina to score a try. That's my prediction. I'm going to say they score a try against this chop and change New Zealand team. And in the end, isn't that the symbolic victory that you really want to see? No, I think in terms of, it might be 39-7 or something. Like, it'll be a big win for the All Blacks. I think they won't score quite as much. I think the chop and changing will have an effect. It'll play Argentina a bit more in. I don't think we'll see them quite as lethal, because I still think Argentina can defend really, really well. They did so last week for ages. So I think it'll be a slightly lower scoring, but still dominant win, like 2 or 3 score, even 4 score win.
I personally don't know. I'm still waiting to see this Pumas team attack. I love the selection. I love a winger at 10. Why not? Let's just be quick. And I love Chocobaris and Sinti in the centres. I think they will look to attack a bit more. The question is whether or not that works. I mean, we saw with Australia trying to attack this All Black defence that it was very, very tough.
Is it Bertrand who's still in at 9? Yeah, get your running game going. Tate McDermott showed you the way. Nick White showed you the way. That's where the space is, in there. Go. Absolutely. It could start from 9, but just the intent to do so quickly and
that's what I want to see. If I see that, then maybe it'll be like 42-17, and that'll be a more traditional All Black Pumas game, which I'd love to see, but I just don't know yet. I'm kind of up in the air. I think the All Blacks will win by about 20, possibly more.
Or it could be 40-0 this time.
Yeah, well,
38-0, 39-0, 40-0, maybe.
But it's on the Pumas. It's on whether or not the Pumas can get something going on offense, and how easy that's going to be to build in a week against a very, very good defense.
They're not going to build it in a week, but the intent and the emphasis you can change in the week, and that's all you're looking for, is just to see them be intent to attack this week where they really weren't.
So I guess that's that game. Hopefully it'll deliver a little more intrigue than it did last week.
Another double header to wrap up, like Rugby Championship double headers. I'm envious of you guys down in Australia. If you're down in Oz, get yourself down to that game. What a show. You're going to get 2 top level test games back to back in Suncorp. That's just a good spectacle for all rugby fans.
Absolutely, looking forward to that one tomorrow. We also have another couple of things to touch on. We have the Rugby World Cup qualifiers, which we were previewing last week. The Eagles and Canada were gunning for a place to play Uruguay for America's 1 spot. This was the second leg. After the first leg, Canada found themselves up 34-21, took a 13-point lead into the second leg. That's right. Which is in Glendale, Colorado, in Infinity Park.
As good as over.
and the US came in and just dominated, as they have done in this fixture for the last decade. They lost all of those jitters and whatever was going on with them in Newfoundland, and they came in and they put together a dominant showing. Gurmashis as a back row, scoring 3 tries and assisting another by taking a cross kick and then just not getting there before his winger got there. All in the first half. He had 3 tries and an assist. Gurmashis had 7
everywhere.
They just owned it at set piece. Unfortunately, we actually didn't get to watch the game. It was depressing because you just couldn't find it anywhere. We were looking around for a place to watch it. It wasn't on. It was last week. It was broadcast on Premier Sports over here, so we were able to get a look at it. But this week we couldn't actually watch it, which was a shame. But from all accounts, it was just the US forward pack putting the steam on the Canadians.
And the Canadians not quite arriving at the pitch that they were at last week. And it was the same team from Canada, but obviously just didn't quite believe it in the end, and ultimately when things started to go wrong, they kept going wrong. A few other standout moments. Ruben de Haas, who I was calling for, he managed to get both a charge down try that was excellent defensive hustle and a 45 metre drop goal that he banged over. Ping, maybe he's a fullback, you never know. I still do maintain that he's a bit of a problem at scrum half in terms of just the basics of clearing rucks quickly, setting a good tempo, but in terms of hustle and good industriousness, being able to read the play such that you get a charge down and run it in, showed good pace and good awareness. But it came from them being all over them. And actually even McGinty from 10 left a lot of scores out there for the tee. His kicking was pretty wayward. So the fact that they ended up, I think, 59-50 on aggregate. They had to overcome a 13-point deficit, and they ended up with a 9-point lead, and they left points out of there.
Canada scored a bonus point try in the last play of the game. It was 38-9 in the match before then. Game long over. The game was pretty much over by half time. And then Taufete'e came in, even starting from tight head. He managed to nip his way to the back of the maul
and get himself into a try. He's got some prolific strike rate. He just loves
when everyone else is busy pushing, he's like, where's the ball, where's the ball, find it, nip to the back, and away I go. Taufete'e try.
It's a good one to go.
They are a good team. They're better than they showed. They need to be quicker, you're right in saying, but they're impressive taking of scores from 5 out, and even McGinty with a nice cross kick try as well.
McGinty was night and day difference in terms of this week versus last week as well. He starts with Faf for sale in the Premiership. He's a top,
was arguably their best player of the year last year.
He's a top level 10, and that makes such a difference when you're talking about tier 2 rugby. Having a guy like that in there is just a game changer for them. And then it is that forward pack. Cam Dolan was immense again, leading the charges from the front. He is a talismanic figure for them, but they are all hefty when they have the impetus. They were very flat and very disappointing out in Newfoundland in leg 1, but they rediscovered themselves a bit here, and they kind of put a dominant stamp on this fixture and managed to secure it with aplomb. And it kind of paints an interesting picture now. They go on to obviously face Uruguay for America's 1, the main slot, the main show, and Canada now, off the back of losing that, have to face Chile. And Chile are no mugs. That's for the opportunity. Is it for America's 2 or just to go into?
No, the winner of Canada Chile plays the loser of
America Uruguay.
Yes, that's right. But the winner of the Canada Chile game will be guaranteed at least a place in the repechage.
Yes, that's
although
right.
that repechage will be fairly stacked. There'll be potentially the likes of Romania
in there. Sure.
That'll be no guarantee. As good as South American rugby in particular has been in recent times, there'll be no guarantees out of that repechage. It'll be a fun tournament when it comes around.
No, it's well if you can secure America's 1 or America's 2, it's well worth for all of those teams involved. It's a hefty enough carrot. So the America getting just reward. They are now in a battle for America's 1.
And Canada, they took a 13-point lead into this and then thoroughly outgunned. No maul defence, still defensively very slight. Their best thing about them is that they can take a try, but they both of these games start on October 7th. Both of them are home and away legs.
Is it October
2nd? Sorry,
soon enough.
Pretty much 2 weeks time. All of those games are home and away as well, so it'll be home
two-legged affairs.
Two-legged affairs is right. But the Canadians are on the ropes.
If they lose their game, they're out. There's no repechage for them. The loser of Chile and Canada will not be going to the World Cup.
And I would add a note that Chile have just for the first time ever in their history, beaten an Argentina 15 select side, an Argentina development squad.
Yeah,
they
not a great weekend for Argentina.
No, not really. But they managed, I think, 3 tries in 10 minutes, which typifies what this Chile team are. And then they were 19-6 down and won the game 25-19. Just came right storming through.
Yeah.
And that was just like sublime performance really from Los Condores. And they have been going from strength to strength for some time. They have a wonderful footballing ability. They're as game to attack, if not more so, than the Canadians, who that's their only strength.
Yeah.
So it's a very dangerous game for Canada.
It's going to be a risky thing. If Canada find themselves outmatched in the shootout, I don't know how they come back into it, because it'll be interesting.
What happened to them against Uruguay the last time out? They had that playoff against Uruguay that they were well beaten in home and away, and that was a shock at the time. Yeah. And obviously we know since then Uruguay have just gone way above Canada.
To strength. Yeah.
And Chile pushed Uruguay all the way this year. They've now beaten an Argentina select team.
That's right.
Like the writing is on the wall for the exact same thing to happen to Canada again, that they could just be steamrolled home and away by a team that is sharper and more developed than they are, and that's the fear.
Could very well be the case.
I think to be sharp as hell if they want to win this game.
This is very true. Chile themselves, I think, they play host to Argentina 15 again this Wednesday. Is that correct?
No. That's that was the game. That was the game.
Okay, that's the one that they won. Yeah.
But that was on Wednesday. So just the other day, a great win for Chile, and those games coming up on October 2nd. Uruguay are going to play in Argentina select this weekend.
Just in terms of preparation,
for
because Argentina, to be fair to them, are bolstering South American rugby by just like in terms of the draft system in the SLAR in the South American League, and also then just the Argentina 15 are always game to put together a match to get teams like Chile and teams like Uruguay primed for big matches like these.
A load of those Chilean players played in their SLAR team, in fact the bulk of them, and that seems to have really helped them get a foothold in terms of just where they are as a team, get to know each other, get a lot more match play in against decent level opposition. It was
a professional rugby franchise that they're in now, and it's a proper squad effort. Like it's, there's a lot of consistency, a lot of continuity in terms of selection. So Chile are not to be slept on at all, particularly if you're Canadian now. You can be worrying about Chile, and also like similarly from the US, like they've seen off Canada now, but Uruguay is a big old challenge too.
Uruguay's a huge challenge. They're going to try and outmuscle them. Uruguay will be quick. The US,
it's a classic rugby stylistic matchup. We have big American forwards versus fast Uruguay players.
And as you point out, America shouldn't be that way, but they certainly are that way at the moment. And the only thing that'll save their grace is if they can either A, dominate up front, or B, put together a really good defensive showing.
Sure. If they can strike confidently from 5 out with the line out maul as they did and defend, then that could be enough to see them through. But the capacity to score quick tries is definitely shifted more towards Los Terros than the Eagles. I think they could strike from coast to coast. They run the ball very well.
Pretty sure Los Terros are bookies' favourites at this stage.
I would have them as such.
And then all of a sudden it could be a match against Chile, and who knows, But that's it. All of those games are to come. On the subject of World Cup qualifiers, we did also have some big ones in the women's game.
That's right.
We'll dress this up as happily as we can, but
it didn't go well.
It didn't go great. It went well for Italy.
That's
Italy
right.
had the opening game and certainly looked the best, for my money, far and away the best team in the competition as of the first round. We'll talk about Spain and Ireland obviously as well, but that was a much tighter affair. So many errors in that game. This game, Italy 38-13 win over Scotland, who are admittedly tame and don't tackle well, but some of the tries that Italy were taking were magnificent.
Lovely flowy moves from the middle third.
So many of them, really striking well, running onto the ball well, great skills, great passing, great support play, backing their skill set and getting it done, and that's not true of any other team in this comp.
No, they were the same in the Six Nations. They were great to watch. They were dealt with by Ireland in the Six Nations just by being a bit more physical than them. But I can't understand how they contrived to lose to Wales, because they were a better team than that Welsh team in that Six Nations, despite the table not reflecting it in the end. But they attack with purpose and vigour, do they, Italy side, and they put themselves in prime position. That being said, you do caveat it. I think Scotland are going to be the whipping girls in this little round robin format. I think being tonked thrice is probably in their future, whereas I think Spain now having seen off Ireland, the other game that happened last weekend was 8-7 to Spain with a last minute try, or not quite a last minute try, a try in the last 10 minutes to give them a 1 point lead, and Ireland, despite having a late kick at it that they left short, they were good enough for only 7 points and not good enough to win the game.
It was not a good game to watch. It was like there was decent physicality out there, but like the errors out of the teams were shocking.
The set piece was a nightmare from both. To be honest, they couldn't secure a line out between them to save their lives. Some of the passing,
it was just a mess. Both teams looked completely out of shape and devoid. And Spain were the team that showed the more intent.
They did.
Sure.
The try they
were
scored
like tapping and going penalties, and they were really pushing for that try towards the end, and ultimately got it and deserved it.
They did. Whereas Ireland, they got one try through Baving Parsons, who's their lightning winger, and then she got hauled off at around 45 minutes early.
It was ridiculous. I mean, she had one drop in the open space, but like I would liken her to like Cora Betty in a fledgling Wallabies team, where she was just everywhere and the only bright spark. Like she'd get the ball and then she'd actually have a bit of hustle about her, and instantly there'd be speed and pace where there wasn't that as soon as she got the ball. And then they took her off sitting on their whatever it was 7-3 lead and got rightfully punished, didn't score again.
Well, they actually the other winger sliced through for what should have been a very nice try, just Murphy Crowe at the beginning of the second half, but it was whistled back because the scrum half fumbled it at the ruck. And as much as like that was unfortunate and it was a nice try chalked off, the response from that Ireland team in the wake of that was not so good. They kind of panicked very much so and tightened up quite a lot, and they ultimately got what they deserved because the game got pinched. And now it's I think Italy obviously in the lead currently off the back of a big score against Scotland, 38-13. But I think all teams in this will be racking up the score against Scotland, and Spain are in a very strong position now, having seen off Ireland.
Racking up the score is one word for it. I don't know if anybody will put 25 points on Scotland like Italy did. Spain and Ireland need to prove that they can stick passes to go into that. For me, Italy are favourites for this now.
Sure,
like they're home. They looked by far the most skilled team in the competition. They looked by far the most together unit in the competition.
True,
and I'm sorry, like some of those non-tries from the Ireland-Spain game were just a consequence of not attacking well enough. Like there was no issue with the amount of space available. They just were dropping balls. They weren't running onto the ball. They weren't showing offensive purpose. Italy were.
They were.
I don't know. I don't quite buy that any of these teams are going to rack up those scores against Scotland like Italy did. I think Italy look better than all of them.
I'm pretty sure both of them will, but that's just judging by Scotland. They were thoroughly bad in the Six Nations, like very, very bad. Like conceding loads of points to Wales, who were also bad. I do have confidence in all of the teams' ability to put Scotland to the sword. I'm very curious to see what shape Italy-Spain takes, because I'm excited to see it, because I think they're just both exciting teams, and now with Spain of the confidence of knocking off Ireland, they'll be gunning for it. And similarly, Italy will fancy it because it's all taking place in Parma. They have the kind of home edge, and it puts our charges. Ireland are definitely on the back foot after that defeat to Spain. There's a scenario where Ireland managed to beat Italy and squeak through because Italy beat Spain, but I think Spain and Italy are both more likely than Ireland currently
at this stage. You'd have to say they both started off with a win each. I mean, it was very impressive in particular from Italy, but a great win from Spain as well. They were the better team against Ireland. Then this week now we have games between Italy and Ireland. That's going to be obviously that all of these games are in Parma, and then we also have Spain and Scotland, and both of those games are on Sunday.
Sunday. 3 o'clock kickoff and a 6 o'clock kickoff, so a little double header up in Parma. And I think first up is Italy Ireland, then Spain Scotland, and Italy
Ireland. Obviously Ireland on the ropes. It's a must.
It's a must win, backs to the wall for them, and for Italy it's a home game that they're going to look to try and win to keep that momentum going into the Spain one. It is just a cutthroat thing. We were looking at it on paper as just this is a tricky little round robin amongst some good teams who all want to be there, and so it's played out. And for me, Italy are clearly the favourites to go and do this from here. For me, they just looked, I know it was Scotland, but they just looked way better on the ball than Ireland or Spain, and I would expect them to continue that at home in the sunshine, in the September sunshine. Just a note before we move on from the women's rugby, it would be remiss of us not to talk about it. It's been a massive sort of ongoing rolling story in Ireland. Just like there's sort of a building amount of things that are going wrong with the women's game in Ireland, which is including this now looking on the ropes World Cup qualifying campaign. But over the weekend, Connacht played a match against Ulster in the Interpro tournament that has been going on over the last few weeks, which everyone was singing the praises of. I was enjoying it. It's all been televised. All the provinces playing some good games. But yeah, it transpired. There was footage released from one of the Connacht players who were very dissatisfied with the changing scenario, and rightly so, because it's some kind of loophole here that has them not it's women's rugby, so it's not categorised as elite sport, and therefore
because
when
it's
they're
not professional or the GAA, which is the only thing that counts as elite sport.
Yes, which is absolute nonsense. And then the net result means that the two perfectly good dressing rooms are not allowed to be opened for them, so they have to set up a tent outside by the bins, by the
coaches set up the tent. Nobody set up the Connacht and Ulster coaches set the tents up themselves because they were just left in an open plane to get changed, which was terrible.
An open plane is a generous term for it. The video shows it's like a scruff. It's a dump
with rats and all sorts of horrible stuff in there as well. Like it was it was all kinds of awful. And it's like the other thing that you would press down is like people have been talking about it. Sexton's been out talking about it.
Ringrose, I think, came out talking about it. Yeah.
Paul Boyle, the Connacht captain, has been out talking about it and saying, you know, obviously we need equal treatment and this needs not to be made again. But more is the point, is just that there's sort of a mounting disregard for the women's game that almost feels tactical, like we'll bury the women's 15s game and just offer nothing to it. Like there's a list of things that people have talked about really since that terrible 2017 World Cup where they were absolutely hopeless.
Out in use, but like terrible hosting of it as well. Like there are many stadia they chose to do it all out in Belfield and UCD, which is just like for anyone from Dublin, removed from town and the crack, and it's not even a stadium, it's just a field on a college campus, and it's like you're going to play the whole tournament here. You're not even going to do a game up in Ravenhill, a game up in the RDS, any of that. They took
precisely no pride in hosting that tournament. They're bored.
I'm sure like playing in New Zealand in 2021, they'll show us how to do it much better than we did.
Because they'll embrace it a little more than we did, and obviously that Ireland team was rubbish in that tournament as well. They then turned down a tour of Australia where even the accommodation was looked after for them. They didn't want to pay the flight fees, and so they basically just turned down that tour and said, we're focusing on November. That was a couple of years back as well. Before
then
COVID.
there are other things, like they're talking about we should make sure this never happens again, and that's always a good thing to say for the line, a good line to say in the back of the crisis. But I remember a couple of years ago in Six Nations, it was a game, Ireland v Scotland, and there was a disgrace because there's no hot water hot water in the showers. Two years, that was only 2 years ago, maybe even 1 year ago, and then you're going like, it's a disgrace, this can never happen again. And then 2 years later, the Connacht women are changing out by the bins. And it's
I'm frustrated with the style of play from the Ireland team at the moment, but if you can actually zoom out and look at it, like Ireland are reaping the consequences of direct divestment and active disinterest in doing even the bare minimum for the women's game at the moment, especially at the 15s level. They just have no interest in investing even the most.
It's a black mark on on an otherwise near impeccable record for the IRFU in the the era. The women's 15s game, which they had
won
such a great team, won a Grand Slam
early last decade.
That's right, and they've managed to take that good positivity and all the young talent through, and they're going like, well, the sevens is in the Olympics, so we'll focus on that for the women's game, and we'll just absolutely ruin the 50s.
They didn't make the Olympics this time out. They have utterly failed the women's game at the moment, the IRFU, and are probably rightfully about to fail to qualify for a World Cup for the first time. Just that is the trajectory. And anyway, listen, that's our own national rant, but hopefully they can fix that, because it's been painful to watch.
It has been painful to watch, and that video certainly that was put out, I don't know who put it out, but one of the Connacht players was putting it up on Instagram, and it was just shocking but not shocking, and that's the most shocking thing of all. You're looking at it going like, well, but what the hell,
Anyway, listen, we'll park that there. The women's qualifier is ongoing this weekend, but we do have club footy to talk about. There's actually quite a bit of club footy going on these days.
Yes, we're getting back into club season now as well. We're going to start by finishing up one which is gone the other end of the trajectory. We're going to start in South Africa, the Currie Cup. Wrapped up last weekend.
It did. It's interesting to see that they're not going to have too much time off, like one weekend off and then into the URC. These South African clubs just don't stop going. But the Blue Bulls record score against the Natal Sharks at Loftus, I mean, just 44-10 it finished. Just
one team was attacking.
One team had a bit of attacking shape and a bit of structure and a bit of purpose and
bit of physicality,
bit of competency. The other team had none of those, and certainly when the Sharks had the ball, you could see that they just didn't know what to do with it. And then more so, the very beginning of the game,
opening try was after like 3 minutes, and the guy they shot up and the 12 just fell over.
It was Marius Lowe.
Just fell over.
Completely slipped, and him and Werner Cox's defensive axis was just a disaster for the Sharks.
I have sympathy for Werner Koch because he's a converted sevens player who started out on the wing. Like, and
what's he doing?
What's he doing defending the 13 channel in a final? You know,
I mean, it was like it's everything you wouldn't associate with the Sharks. I don't know what's going on in the coaching group there. I mean, they have Khaleesi and Am ultimately to return to this team, along with like Thomas du Toit and a bunch of these Boks. But I mean, what's going on in the interim is just baffling. Like to see a defensive setup so disoriented after
it was only 3 minutes.
Just after such a long season of like trying to get things to work, to have nothing to offer on defense. And listen, the Bulls are more physical than them. You can almost
the Bulls
forgive.
played a tidy game.
They did, and they struck well off set piece. But I mean, the Sharks are like way off. Like that was really for a final against the Bulls. That was just really poor. Like you can't start a game like that. You have to get off the line and smash them back, and then make them do.
No, they got off the line, but then they fell over.
Yeah, just wildly not good enough for a final. But the Bulls are encouraging. They're putting a bit of a team together.
They are. Yeah, no, they've just signed. I think Bismarck Duplessis has announced he's going to return to their ranks as well. Like
they're adding more Bok legitimacy. Like they have Vorster at 12 and Mapu is a good centre partnership.
That's
totally
right. Yeah, Mapu's been very impressive.
He has.
He's below
super pair of scrum cap wearing Mapu.
That's right. Yeah, no, he's been impressive for a couple of years, to be honest. And it's only for the presence of the likes of Nathaniel Am and even who am I thinking of? I don't know who you're thinking
Jesse
Creel.
Oh, Jesse Creel, sorry.
But it's just that only for that is he so far back. But he's another one of these guys, like if freak things happen and those two centres go down, he'll rock up in a Springbok jersey and do a very, very good job.
Yeah, he's probably not the most defensive player, but they've options at 10, obviously. Like Chris Smith played on the weekend. They've huge stocks at back row with Marcel Coetzee and Arno Bota, and Elric Lowe was looking so physical out there last week.
That was a big point of difference, as it always is with the Bulls against the other SAFA teams. It's some of those back row guys, the big physicality that they bring.
Oh, totally. And they've got like Jacques Duplessis back in, Rowan Combrink back in the side.
Yeah,
good to see him back. Actually, it's looking much more legit, and they definitely look much more ready for the trip north than they were a few months back.
And certainly you'd be concerned looking at not only the Sharks but even the Stormers last week we were talking about as well. Like all of these teams that are strong clubs, but they're going to have to be primed and ready for the URC. And on evidence here, they have some work to do. The Bulls are primed and ready. I think the Bulls are ready for week 1 against Leinster in a couple of weeks' time.
The Sharks travel to Thomond Park to play Munster.
Tough opening day fixture.
If you're going to be just slipping and falling at set piece defense first phase, on set piece defences,
they'll run through you happily, trot through you happily. Yeah, so work-ons for the Sharks. Congratulations to the Bulls, perpetual champions, the Blue Bulls.
Yes, indeed. Well, finally they have a bit of new life and a few new teams to play. Some who won't necessarily play into their hands for 80 minutes.
That's true.
But no, congratulations to the Bulls. They are building a very nice team. Jake White is doing a patiently good job as he always does.
True.
And the Bulls are
right to
force.
keep faith with them for a while yet. He's building things nicely for them. They're the one South African club that you'll cite as a positive trajectory. Them and the Griquas. The Griquas did well in this campaign. Making it as far as the semi-final was good for them.
The Sharks need to add all these cheetahs to their ranks, and hopefully that could
bolster them. Getting Pinar in at 9 or 10 and being a bit more assured.
Absolutely. But yes, that was the Currie Cup. There's also European rugby, which is coming back in a big way now in the weeks to come. The Top Coutures had a number of games last week. There were a few shocking results. Montpellier looking very good with a big win over Brive, but Clermont losing a home game to Cast 34-30, and I knew they were in trouble as soon as it was level scores at half time.
Yes.
I was like, oh no, Clermont, you need to be up by like 30
at
half time.
Going on evidence in week 1. No, indeed.
But a home loss for them. Terrible start to John O'Gibbs'.
And conversely, great start for Cast. They scraped out a 16-12 at the beginning, and now they scrape a nice away win in the Marcel Michelin.
They're being punished for being a little too Cast last year. They need to learn their lessons. They finished the season very strong last year, but they left themselves too much to do, so they've got out of the blocks well this time around, which they need to do, because they are, when they put it together, they're a very competent, good team.
They're actually what you were citing from the Sharks in terms of this. Cast have a bit of that in terms of when the chips are down, having a bit of grit. Something that we didn't see from the Sharks in that Currie Cup final, but what you associate with the club tradition and identity. Cast are a kind of a match play team. You know, when it gets to the barrage, they love a bit of a barrage run. They love coming from 8th to 1st, and be damned with your Toulouse. We're just going to nick this bouclier right here.
Absolutely,
they've done it before.
They have, and I do always respect Cast, and that was definitely the most eye-catching result of the weekend. Pooh also a disappointing away loss for Lyon, who I had bigged up, but obviously just the travelling woes of French teams continue, as
That's
you saw.
true.
Mostly home wins. In fact, home wins everywhere else. Montpellier, Pau, Perpignan over Biarritz, Bordeaux smashed Stade Francais, with Jalibert looking good, and Racing gave La Rochelle their second loss of the on the bounce as well.
That's true. Yeah.
And Toulouse absolutely hammered Toulon.
I saw that. It was a complete mismatch. Toulouse and Toulon. Poor old man Parise was not up for the pace of those Toulouse heads.
Toulon were
Parise did announce he's retiring at the end of the year. He's 38 years old now.
38 years old. But like, you forget how much of a legend
he is. Yeah, no, like,
absolutely. He was, 10 years ago, he was like arguably the best number 8 in the world.
In the world, that's true. Yeah. And it's that he was the counter argument to the facile argument of Southern Hemisphere guys going like, oh well, he's not the best player in the world. He's never won a World Cup. And it's like, well, Parise's never won. By that metric, Devon Toner's a superior rugby player than Sergio Parise, and that's not necessarily true. He just plays for Italy.
Yeah, exactly. And whereas now he might be. That was obviously a struggle for Toulon. This week there's a few interesting games. Biarritz Racing kicks off the weekend, but the most eye-catching match is Montpellier, who've started on a flyer, hosting Toulouse. That's the best challenge for Toulouse so far. And then that evening,
Saturday at 5:00, is it? That's a curtain raiser for Clermont La Rochelle, which is a marquee fixture and normally a top of the table
and will be
clash.
A good game.
Will be a great game. Both of the sides are winless so far.
Yeah.
Somebody's always got to go.
0-2, and it's John O'Gibbs v Ronan O'Gara, which is also fun.
Lovely dramatics. The amount of fun those French directors can get into with all the panning to Jono, panning to Rog, panning back to Jono, and then back to the kicker as he lines up his kick. Nice little low arse shot going from the French director.
Or just a zoom on the logo on his boot that pans out slowly.
Yeah, some of this great stuff that we love seeing from French rugby. Some of the stuff that Brian Moore can't stand when he's doing comms, and it's like, excuse me for the French coverage, load of rubbish. I quite like it, you know.
It's definitely very artsy.
It is.
But yes, that is the top couture. Those games going on this weekend. But that is not all. We have also the return of the Premiership in England.
Premiership is back,
which is great to see, and that kicks off tonight as you're watching on Friday with an absolute humdinger of a game between Bristol and Saracens. Saracens back in the mix at the top table where they want to be. Billy Vunipola starting for them, Belden Earl, Jackson Ray, Alex Lazowski's back in there starting at 10 this week. I mean, it's a very good Saracens team, and we all know Bristol and how they are, and
they'll be a little bit stung given that they topped the table last year and then ended up ousted in the semi-final, but they are still a top quality team, and their trajectory as far as progress under Pat Lam has season on season just been building and building. And it was a setback last year. That was undoubtedly a setback to that unerring progress.
It was interesting hearing Lam talk about last year, because they were noting that when he joined in 2017 he had a 5-year plan at that stage to win the Premiership. And obviously they've basically jumped ahead of their schedule with how good progress has been. But still last year they obviously did fluff their lines after topping the regular season, and this year is the 5-year plan. This is 2022, so this is the year for them
to win it. But then Sarries are back in the mix now, and Exeter are
Quins
still there. Quins are champs defending.
It's a great league.
It is.
I mean, it's a 13
Wasps
team
still there as well. All of these guys.
It's a 13 team league this year, which is good because it gives everyone a bye. I prefer that system.
Yeah, because they do get through an awful lot of rugby, and especially in the last 2 seasons they've gone through a hell of a lot of rugby, these teams. So having an extra team in there means you can rotate that, have a bye each week.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fine. This week I think it's Wasps with the bye.
That's right, but there are some good games going on.
That's right. Obviously Bristol Saracens gets us underway, but then Saturday is really where the meat of it is happening. We have Leicester Tigers v Exeter Chiefs at 3:00 on Saturday. We also have Northampton Saints v Gloucester at 3, and Worcester Warriors v London Irish all at 3:00. And then at 5 o'clock, Sale Sharks v Bath, which is actually a good little fixture there as well. And then the only game on Sunday is Newcastle v Harlequins. So the Premiership champs having to wait till Sunday. They'll watch everyone scrap out before taking the field themselves.
And they'll be licking their wounds after taking a bad loss to Leinster in pre-season the other week.
You were in there.
My first game back to a rugby match.
Back to see Leinster in the Viva Stadium. That was quite nice. Although
stuff.
It's for none of the marbles.
Johnny Sexton looking good though.
That's true.
But then that's not all. That is not all. We also have another club competition in Europe.
What could it be?
We have the Rugby Europe Super Cup, which is a brand new competition about to get underway this weekend. So there's 8 teams in the competition this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. You have, starting in the afternoon, Delta, who are a Dutch team from the Netherlands. They're going to be hosting the Brussels Devils, obviously from Belgium. Then you have the Portuguese Lusitanos facing the Spanish Iberians, and that also on Saturday. And then on Sunday you have 2 Russian teams who actually are established clubs prior to this, NSISTM I should say, and Lokomotiv. They'll be playing each other. And then there's 2 other teams who for COVID reasons can't participate in the opening round but will make up for it in about a month's time, and that's the Tel Aviv Heat from Israel and Black Lion from Georgia, which is a good name for the Georgian franchise,
Black Lions.
Lion, which I do like as well. But there's a brand new competition, Rugby Europe putting it on. It's available to watch on rugbyeurope.tv.
Yeah, same resource that shows you the Rugby Europe Championship. They're trying to big this up. We were kind of going through a breakdown of it before on one of our previous podcasts, but the goal here is to try and not only just create a new franchise amongst these amongst these teams, but also hopefully if they can build a brand such that they have a good product in a couple of years, maybe an avenue, open a door to get into the Challenge Cup or maybe get into European rugby down the line. It'll be very interesting to see just how it goes.
I would love to see one of these teams ultimately. I think honestly STM have played in the Challenge Cup before.
They have, yeah. So they've changed the format a few times to prevent them from either being able to qualify or not. I know they've jigged that around a few times when they've restructured European footy, but certainly with the SAFA teams coming up north and being allowed in, you got to feel like if this competition grows a bit of legs and has a bit of power to it and a bit of weight in a couple of years, there should be a path for the winners from this to come in and compete at the top level in Europe, I think.
This is a professional game as well. It will need to make money. It's a great point of just to bet in for all of the internationals, obviously from these nations. It's the main thing, professional contracts getting to settle down and then just improve the standard of rugby, obviously on the national level. From the point of view of all of these countries, it should be a great help to them. The Georgian players who aren't picked up elsewhere will play for Black Lion, and likewise like the guts of the Netherlands team in Delta, and likewise across the board for all of these teams. It's going to be great for them. There's also some interesting sort of experienced players who've been recruited. The Tel Aviv Heat in Israel have recruited Nick Groom, the South African scrum half, who's obviously been around, and also Namibian international Botma, and Gabriel Ibitoya, who would be the standout, who, if you'll remember, was an awesome player for the under-20s, and I think it was Saracens, and he scored some highlight reel level tries, and then kind of fell off the radar a bit a year or so ago, and now here he is playing in this competition, which is a weird fall from grace for him. But I mean, he could make it up and
create some box office moments in this new comp. As we were saying with SLAR in South America, that was plagued by rescheduling and stuff through COVID, and it was just trying to find its feet with a few kind of rounds under their belt. Getting these matches played, albeit one is postponed due to COVID reasons and travel restrictions, but just getting a few matches played, getting them televised for free up on Rugby Europe TV, try and establish a product there first, and then hopefully in a couple of years' time you have a bargaining chip to play at the global rugby kind of table. That's the goal for it. I think currently the final is scheduled to take place in May 2022. So it's a it's
only 6-round regular season with the semi-finals in April, so they've loads of time.
They have loads of time to rejig and reschedule things, which is correct and proper with a fledgling tournament. You don't want to overreach too soon, but it would be nice to see some good crowds and some good rugby.
I think you need it. At the end of the day, it's still professional and it needs to make money, and so I'm hopeful that it's not going to be just games taking place on a field in a college campus, as you say, where it seems to be buried and there doesn't seem to be anybody at it. Like it very much needs the local buy-in to survive. It does. And that needs good broadcasting. Hopefully Rugby Europe could put together some good highlights packages and really sell it. Because it could be a good tournament, but obviously you could also see it going wrong if it doesn't get any buy-in.
Too early to tell really with it. But the first games are on this weekend, and you can watch them, as we said, for free. RugbyEurope.tv, they're going to try and promote them, and if you can, I'm sure you can do that on replay as well. But just rooting for these new tournaments to kind of establish themselves and kind of spread their roots and just grow the game. It's the grassroots up is how you grow this game.
100%. Just before we wrap up the show with the news of the week, we also have just to look at is the Vancouver Sevens. The World Sevens series is returning this week, which has been off for the longest time since the beginning of COVID, and obviously everybody's COVID situation globally is in constant flux, and some are better than others, and then you have this like heavily vaccinated populations and non-vaccinated populations, and then do we need like it's all so up in the air that it makes it very, very difficult to do anything on a global scale.
And much less the sevens format is the most affected, where they're globe trotting, hopping from city to city, one weekend at a time, jumping around the globe, planes and all of this.
Epidemiologist nightmare.
Yes, indeed. But a rugby fan's dream. Like it's a great product and a great spectacle, and I'm glad to see it back underway and it kicking off in Vancouver. It is slightly different in terms of this year. There are a few teams, because of all those COVID reasons, electing not to take part. I think New Zealand, Fiji, Australia, France,
to name a few.
They're all missing out. So and I think also oddly, Team GB are still involved. We're not doing England, Scotland, and Wales, despite the shortage of teams. GB are going to pool their resources and try and nick this one.
Yes, indeed. So the World Rugby have also said that there's no relegation from the 2021 series. There'll be a lot of invite only competitions. It's just going to be basically try and get the show back on the road.
Exactly, and it won't be affecting rankings either. I don't think. I think they're going to freeze them, which is kind of fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Sevens is still a great product if you have the means of watching it. I believe if it's not broadcast by someone in your country, World Rugby will have it up on their YouTube page and their socials, and you'll be able to watch that. Like it's just, as you all know, it's a great product to watch the Sevens series when it's on its flow, and it tends to be very enjoyable. So definitely check it out if you have the means. It's great to see it back. There are 3 pools in this competition, and just the 12 teams, so 3 pools of 4. South Africa, Spain, Kenya, and Mexico make up Pool A, and South Africa have brought a decent team with some real stocks.
They'll likely be favourites
themselves, and GB are favourites, and the Pool B is Great Britain, Ireland, Hong Kong, and Jamaica. Hong Kong in the past have had a good team. It would be very interesting to see the Jamaican Sevens team, because they probably should just stack it with all the sprinters.
All those sprinters who got banned from the Olympics for smoking weed, chuck them on a Sevens pitch.
Absolutely, just get stack it with a bunch of sprinters and they'll do okay. Ireland have brought a bit of a developmental squad as well, so like there's no Jordan Conroy or Terry Kennedy or any of these guys. There's only 3 from the World Cup squad, from the Olympic squad in there, so it's
there's going to be a bare bit of developmental stuff, and it's going to be
just development stuff. Is that the word for it anyway? But then Pool C is Canada, USA, Chile, and Germany, and likewise the USA have gone with bringing in new talent and mixing it up, probably because these rankings won't be affected and it's the first game back. Canada will have some of that home field juju, but it'll definitely be. I'm glad to see that they got 12 teams to play it anyway, and always look out for Chile.
Watch out for Chile, because they kick the ball more than any other Sevens team that I've ever seen. They actually love dropping it on the toe, which is not a tactic you very often see in it, but they're all just a bunch of footballers, so it's great.
They're a lot of fun.
There are many ways to play this game, and you can see it going a lot of different ways, and I'm just excited to see it back, albeit shorn of a few of the main men and the main teams, but it'll just be good to get the show back on the road. And then new this year as well, they have a Fast Four women's tournament that's featuring Canada, USA, Great Britain, and Mexico.
Mexico.
So they have that as well as a show there.
Definitely
as well.
rooting for Mexico. Let's see what the Mexicans can do.
I have no idea what to expect from the Mexican women in the Sevens pitch, but I will be watching with intent. And as you say, it'll be up on World Rugby's socials if you want to check that out as well this weekend.
Yes, absolutely. But listen, without much more to say, we're going to wrap up the show as we do with the rugby news of the week. Not too much in the news this week, but one of the headline stories that caught our eye was just that The Guardian initially reported anyway that England are going to basically make a bid for the 2031 World Cup, just 16 years after hosting it in 2015. Just 16 years after hosting it in 99. I mean, like, it's an interesting one. They obviously, it was part of their sort of long-term vision plan, which they're going to announce, which is designed to ensure England are consistently in the top 2 in the world rankings, as outlined by their new chairperson, Tom Ilube. And like, that is an amusing thing to see them doing, because I remember Ireland doing something similar after 2018, and just, it was complete nonsense.
Yeah, consistently in the top 4. It was part of that mission
just
statement.
Something you say, like, like, what are you actually talking about?
That's
like,
a goal. That's a hard goal written down.
Yeah, it's just I just think that's silly. Like, there's a lot of good teams out there. Top 2 in the world all the time is a bit of an unrealistic thing. It's just something you've written down on paper to go, Marr.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to actually do that?
It looks good in bullet point form, and the best left that way, I think.
Try not to get suckered into it. But England as World Cup hosts in 2031, do you like it? Do you hate it? They did a very good job in 2015, but
they did a very obliging job of being the only team to be, the only host nation to be knocked out of their home World Cup. Yes, I'll bring that up for all our English subs.
It was a great. All they have to say is quarter-final, and then you just have to engage
shell
mode again.
High guard again, whatever. Roll with that one.
But I thought their last World Cup that they had was one of the best ever. But I would personally like to see some more diversity in terms of the hosts.
So would I. Start with Ireland.
Even further afield, I would love to see Ireland in there, but I'd even further afield. Like, I think there's a balance that you have to get. You know, England will do it well. You know, they'll make lots of revenue. You know, the stadiums will be full.
Same equation that led to France this time. You know, and they did the smaller nation with New Zealand, and New Zealand are rugby mad, and they did a great job. But then they went immediately back to places like Japan, and then back to France.
Japan was obviously a great one because the market was there that they could deliver on it. Like, the problematic one, like, you imagine bigger and better, and you want to see it like in the USA, and then obviously there's a chance that could just get buried.
It's true.
In amongst all that goes on in the US, and there's no guarantee that the public will engage with it at all.
True. Or you kind of fancy things like Argentina, but then you don't know.
Argentina is a good one. Yeah. Argentina is definitely one where, like, you know, it hasn't been to South America before. There is a tremendous grassroots following of rugby over there.
Sure.
I'd love to see them broaden it out and bring it over there for sure. The 2027 World Cup, they're going to announce both of these, I think, in May of next year. And in 2027, Australia are favourites to take it, and they've obviously hosted again.
They've done a great job of pitching it by just not even their pitch, but by hosting the Tri Nations and now the Rugby Championship this year. They're getting bitten by the hosting bug.
Fill their stadiums, or I'll be a little uneasy. Personally,
that's a fair.
Are they actually going to show up to watch Georgia play Canada? Like, or are they just mate, not going to that one?
Yeah,
like, because if you want to host it, you have to commit to filling your stadiums.
Yeah,
I think.
I should think so.
I did that. A little disruptive from me from a Wallaby point of view. But listen, if they do host it, hopefully they embrace it and it saves rugby in the country.
I'm sure they would, for sure. I wouldn't hate to see it go there, but I do agree with the broader point that you would like to see just a more diverse group of nations.
Interestingly, Russia are putting together a bid for the 2027 World Cup as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they could host it. One that would be an interesting one. I'm sure they have the infrastructure to do so.
Would that guarantee them a place? It must guarantee them a place.
That's why that's all about the game. They'll get there if we host it. I don't know if it guarantees your place. I think it does.
I think it must.
Yeah.
I think you have to have the host team.
Yeah.
It gives it life, like.
It does. You saw from the Japanese crowd were absolutely fantastic last time out, and it just does add an awful lot. And I'm sure for France it'll be the same thing, the colour in a few years' time when that comes around as well. They're interesting to see them launch a bid. I'm not sure if it'll be successful. I think they do
Australia, then England, then New Zealand, then France, then England, then Australia,
maybe Japan again in 40 years. I don't know.
I mean, listen, we'll see what happens there. There was also just on the subject of World Cups, the chief executive of World Rugby, Alan Gilpin, has been or Glippin is it? He's been talking about the possibility of scheduling the World Cup to once every 2 years, basically off the back of FIFA saying the same thing, and he was saying, that's an opportunity we'd stay open to. And obviously, like the biennial competition, a bunch of people have come out and said, no, that's obviously not going to work. And clearly not. But what's interesting about it for me is that it just goes to show that the bigwigs at World Rugby, for all of their bluffing on the global calendar, they haven't really got a Scooby-Doo what they're doing with it at all, have they? Like, they're just still spitballing all kinds of ideas.
All kinds of World 12s. Or, I don't know,
No, the World 12s is not World Rugby now.
No,
World Rugby are angry about World 12s.
Okay.
And I think rightly so.
Yeah, well, it's not going to work either, but they are just spitballing ideas. And the global calendar one is one that makes no sense to me, because you don't need one. Like, not only do you not need one, and you have the Six Nations rooted where it is, and the Rugby Championship rooted where it is by tradition, and they're the massive revenue generators, but also, like, seasonally, like,
it's winter sports.
It's winter, well, it's just like there are different seasons. If you're going to play rugby in Australia and you're going to play rugby in England, they're the other side of the globe. So that's going to change things.
100%. I think what they're trying to say is that they want to play most of the meat of the season in the sort of June, July, August period, where in Europe it is quite hot, but not as hot as it gets in the southern hemisphere countries. And then you obviously might get the better standard of rugby in Europe, I think, is their spitball idea. But for me, it doesn't work.
It won't work.
I think what's interesting, what's sort of revealing in that statement is that really, despite their bluffing, they haven't got any kind of.
And yet they landed on it with the Autumn Nations Cup. They did it by accident, and they still haven't gone back to it. Just do the Autumn Nations Cup. Do it as a league format. Do it. We're just going to do a bunch of random fixtures every autumn. Speaking of, Portugal are going to play Canada this autumn. That's a good game. I'm delighted to see more of those Tier 2 games coming together. But anyway, I digress. There is also just a bit of signing news.
We had Big Dwayne
today. That only broke today. We're shooting it on Thursday, but Big Dwayne Vermeulen, World Cup winner and all-round juggernaut, has signed for Ulster Rugby. He's going to the Northern Province on a 2-year deal, and that is
up to Leinster going, where's our World Cup winning?
Where's our Vermeulen?
Indeed. Munster and Ulster getting all the spoils here from the World Cup winning Springboks. But man, oh man, good signing for Ulster. What a replacement for Coetzee.
That's it. They lost Coetzee out with one Bok in with another. He will no doubt add a lot. He'll be very, very good value, especially with that Coetzee shaped hole. And then some like the contributions Coetzee was making in those typical Pro 14 games, what will now become the typical URC games. Like, Big Dwayne will thrive in that environment, and I'd imagine he'll do very well at European level as well when they get there. They'll need him come that part of the season.
He won't be there though till December.
No, he's on Bok duty till then.
He's right. He'll be finishing out his tour with the Boks, and he's 35 as well, and does have a bit of an injury profile. So there's some risk attached to the signing, but hopefully, touch wood, he stays fit and can be a huge, impactful presence for that Ulster team, because they could certainly use a talismanic figure like him.
You'd rather have him as your enforcer than Geordie Murphy.
You would. There's no doubt about
forceful about it.
There's no doubt about that.
It's a bit of a coup there, and the ongoing relationship between South Africa and Ulster Rugby continues, because they do seem to like each other. They vibe off each other,
and Munster too. I mean, it's a funny one. Definitely, the South Africans have it in with so many clubs in Europe these days, though. But that is a great signing for Ulster. And then finally, just to wrap up the show, I thought we'd come full circle and talk about Quade Cooper again.
Yeah, why not? It is the season for talking all things Quade.
All things Quade. We didn't mention him enough last week. We're going to give him all the mentions this week. That rolling story about his lack of Australian citizenship, which is crazy and baffling, given he's lived in the country since he was 13 years old.
He's got 70 plus caps for the national side. He kicked the winning goal last week. He kicked 23 points against the world champs. Let him in.
The story that was rolling was prior to his appearance for the test team this year, I think he'd said that he failed to prove that he was of significant value to the country or something, and then obviously the jumping abroad for residency is counted against him as well.
Sure,
but it looks like now, according to
cooler heads are finally prevailing.
They are going to get him his citizenship, and I think he can prove without doubt that he is a citizen of tremendous value.
Of value to the Wallabies, I think, to the country in terms of kicking last minute goals and winning games. Jeez, you'd be very, very upset looking at that if you were just awaiting immigration status yourself, just as a guy, just a bloke. I'm just a bloke trying to get into Oz. You're like, good luck, mate. Quade Cooper.
One of their most notable sports people of the last decade, has been in the country since he was 13 and couldn't get a handle on his citizenship, but it does look like he's going to get it. So congratulations to Quade in all things. You truly are the man of the week.
That's right.
You get that prize from us.
Yes.
But listen, I think that wraps us up. I think
there's
not much more to talk about. Two great games, in particular that Aussie Safa game this weekend. It'll be really, really fun. And do be sure to join us next week as well, where we're going to be looking ahead to that much anticipated clash match, the 100th test match between the Springboks and the All Blacks. Regardless of what happens to the Springboks this weekend, that is going to be a juicy game, so be sure to join us to check that one out.
Absolutely. And if you haven't already, please do like, subscribe, ring the bell so you're notified of when we drop these videos as well. And once again, thank you so much, 2K. We're past that little milestone. We're chuffed and delighted to have you on board. And as usual, any thoughts you have, any questions, queries, comments, drop them down there and below.
Absolutely, yes. Like and share and all the good stuff. Listen, thanks guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Alright.
Skim the top.
Pinged the top.
You gotta go this time.
Oh, the bottom. Wait.
No good.
No good.
No! The mug! No!